Bet. Welcome to our virtual meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. All panelists have the ability to mute and unmute themselves. Please continue to use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak. The name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. City staff will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the Transportation Commission may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the body, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Joe. Aiden, if you call the roll, please.
Chris McCahill.
Here.
Ann Kovich.
Here.
Bridget Brown.
Here.
Harold Clemes.
Here.
Patricia Bennett.
Here.
Robbie Weber.
Here.
Darren Wozniewski.
Here.
Charles Miazzi.
He is excused. He emailed Joe that he was at another meeting, and if we didn't need him, he would attend that meeting, Aiden. So I think that happened before you came on.
And Barbara Harrington McKinney. And Denise Jess, who might be a few minutes late.
Yeah, Denise had a work thing that was going to keep her potentially a few minutes into the meeting, but she does plan to be here after she's done with that. Okay, so by my count, is Bill here? Is he not here? Don't see Bill either. Is that right, Aiden? So we're missing Alder Harrington McKinney, Alder Miazzi, Bill and Denise right now?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so that means Harold and Darren, at the moment, you both can vote. So, awesome. Hey. So did everybody have an opportunity to look at the minutes from the last meeting? Harold?
Move approval of the minutes.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Here's Bill. Chris, is that a second?
Yep.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, well, I'll assume a unanimous consent vote, unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion is carried. So at this point, we're still missing two. So Harold and Darren, you're still able to vote. Okay. Do we have any public comments this evening for item 1?
We do not.
Okay. Just for everybody's information, last count, there are over 60 people registered to speak this evening, or registered, this evening, with 34 registered to speak. So a lot of public engagement this evening. Are there any disclosures or recusals this evening? Okay, seeing none. So for the consent agenda, we're proposing items 2 through 4. We added item 4 yesterday for the consent agenda. Aiden, are there any of these items where there's a member of the public registered and wishing to speak?
There is not.
Okay. Are there any of the proposed items that anybody on the commission wishes to be separated from the consent agenda? So please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none. We have item 2, Legistar 70199, with regard to vacating and discontinuing multiple unimproved public street right-of-ways within the plat of Acacia Ridge. Item 3, Legistar number 70090, accepting the Madison Department of Transportation 2021 Annual Operation Report. And item number 4, 70384, suspending the carpool discounted rates throughout all of the City of Madison parking facilities. Does anyone wish to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, there's a motion. Robbie, is that a second?
Yes.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I assume not, since it's a consent agenda. Okay, we'll assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move right into item 5, which is relating to Hammersley Road project. So we'll follow our normal pattern of hearing from staff first. And then once we've heard from staff, we will hear from members of the public who wish to speak. And then we'll get into discussion by members of the commission and any alders who are on the call. I see a number of alders on the call. Welcome to you all. Any alders who are on the call who wish to participate in that discussion as well. So, Aaron, are you going to do the presentation?
Yep, I will be. I will share my screen. I'll be sharing the presentation. Hello, everyone. I'm Aaron Canton with Streets Section City Engineering. Here today, back once again for the Hammersley Road resurfacing project. The resurfacing project, just brief overview, is slated over 2 years from Brookwood Road to the Beltline Frontage Road. Today, we're focusing on the 2022 project, which is from Brookwood Road to Gilbert Road, just shy of Gilbert. And the general proposal, as I'm sure many of you are aware, is to narrow the street, removing all on-street parking and bike lanes, and constructing an off-street multi-use path on the north side. And we brought this to the last TC meeting, and we had some things up in the air with the Whitney Way crossing shown here. And since then, traffic engineering has conducted a pilot study, which actually ends tomorrow. And they ultimately are recommending removing the left turn from eastbound Hammersley to northbound Whitney in order to create the safest possible path crossing here. I'm going to pass it on to Jeremy Nash from Traffic Engineering, who's going to talk more about the results of that study and our ultimate decision or recommendation.
Thanks for that, Aaron. Good evening, everyone. Once again, I'm Jeremy Nash with Traffic Engineering. So we conducted a pilot of the closure of both the turn bays, both into and out of that western leg of Hammersley. And so currently the pilot is still ongoing, as Aaron mentioned, and we'll finish tomorrow. We did close down both turn bays to get a feel for it, but we're only recommending the closure of that northern one, and that's the turn from eastbound Hammersley into northbound Whitney. So there's a few things I kind of wanted to touch on about the pilot. In terms of written responses or people who reached out with feedback, we received 19 responses. 6 were in favor and 13 were opposed. Some of the common comments that we heard were concerns about traffic jams, or if you turn right off of Hammersley to go onto Whitney to make a U-turn at Dorset, there was concern about traffic jam in that single block. So those are kind of some of the common comments we got about the pilots. In terms of crashes at this intersection, over the last 6 years, I apologize, there were 12 crashes. And if the geometrics were as they were shown currently, what's what we're proposing, there would only have been 6 crashes. So there's a heavy amount of crashes due to that left turn off of eastbound Hammersley onto northbound Whitney. So that was a common factor of the crashes. We collected a little bit of data. Unfortunately, we have 2 manual counters. It's a machine about the size of a clipboard. And we've had them for 12 years, and they have worked just fine. And both of them died when making counts on this project. So unfortunately, we didn't get quite as many turning movement quite as much data for turning movement counts as we had originally planned. But with the closure of this turn bay, it makes sense for a lot of vehicles to turn right onto Whitney and head south. And then the next intersection to the south is Dorset, and then make a U-turn there and then to proceed northbound on Whitney. So that's kind of the common movement and what we expected most traffic to do. It's worth noting that if you were living at the northeast corner of this intersection at 1230 South Whitney Way, you headed towards the Beltline, you're headed north on Whitney. It would take you 1 minute to get there if you were using that turn bay. It would take you 2 minutes to get there if you turn right and make a U-turn at Dorset. And it would take 3 minutes to get there if you were to head west in Hermosley and then take Piping Rock over to connect to Whitney and then head up. So relatively minor impacts on travel times due to this. I did also want to mention that I was out there a few times to observe just kind of at peak hour to get a feel for how traffic is operating out here. And most traffic is making a right on Hermosley and then making a U-turn making a right onto Whitney and then making a U-turn at Dorset. So that was kind of the heaviest movement. I was kind of measuring, and 4 out of every 5 cars were able to make a U-turn without having to slow down or stop, without having to come to a complete stop. There's very good sight distance at Dorset, plenty of visibility. You can see quite a long distance. So this is going to be a safe location for a U-drive or U-turn, and seems to be able to handle the additional traffic. There's at max, I saw 4 cars waiting on Whitney Way that make a U-turn on or at Dorset. But there is a fair amount of space for southbound Whitney. So if there's vehicles waiting to turn, vehicles headed southbound are able to get around them just fine. There are plenty of intersections. The intersections are pretty close by, so plenty of opportunities for U-turns. There are plenty of gaps. I even watched a big UPS truck make a U-turn at Dorset without any issue. So overall, the impact of this has closing that turn bay was that it reduced the accessibility for vehicles. They would not be able to make that turn anymore and have to find alternate routes. However, it would increase the safety at the intersection for pedestrians and bicyclists and make it a bit more accessible and easier to cross. We'd also are proposing an RFB at that crossing, a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, specifically for vehicles that are heading northbound in Whitney. You're kind of on top of a hill, so making sure it's nice and visible. As you're heading down that hill, you'll see, but there is someone crossing before you even get there. Obviously, this island would create significantly better refuge for pedestrians and bicyclists rather than what's out there right now. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Aaron.
Thanks, Jeremy. So that covers the Whitney crossing pretty well. As mentioned, we'd include an RFB, quite a tall one to make sure it's visible for northbound traffic coming down the hill. Additionally, some other things I wanted to point out is this design has developed starting back on the west side at Brookwood. You'll notice the recent exhibit, there are some tapers built in to the geometry. This is, as you know, we're proposing a substantially narrowed street. We do need to make sure we can accommodate larger vehicle turns at the intersections. And so we've included that, trying to keep as good a balance as possible, reducing how much we have to taper, but still allowing for buses to be out here, as currently there are Metro routes here, as well as Metro supplemental school service routes. And even if the Metro routes change, the school service routes will continue to be out here. Also, we'll mention regarding the parking pocket, this was, as previously proposed, the long block between Brookwood and Whitney. We originally had it quite a bit longer to accommodate 5 to 7. We have since revised the parking pocket to accommodate 2 to 3 spots. The reason for this is to save this large oak here. Hearing a lot of feedback from residents, specifically in this area, generally concerns about the parking pocket, but especially the tree removal. So we shortened that to only to take advantage of an already set tree removal due to its condition. So this would be a 2 to 3 on-street parking pocket on the south side. As well, not the exact direction we would want to go, but we'd need to narrow the path slightly to 8 feet over a certain stretch here. This is because of large tree roots directly behind the curb. Working with the forestry department and looking at the construction feasibility, having that extra half foot in this section means a lot for those tree roots that grow quite strong behind the back of curb. So a little extra space there really will help us to protect. That's just a short stretch covering a few hundred feet or so, and then return to the 8.5 wide path over this stretch. Otherwise, Ed Whitney also included some flares to accommodate buses, as there are buses currently, and will continue to use right and left turns here. The path tapers with the crossing. In some ways, that actually is better to move that crossing to the north, having that combined median island there, as we want to create as much space from northbound traffic coming down the hill before the crossing. Another thing that came up from the last TC meeting was asking to see the feasibility of a parking pocket on the block of Hammersley between Whitney and Gilbert. We looked into this, and it is unfortunately not feasible given the grading, trees, and mainly because there's a lot less space behind the back of curb to the right of way to work with, substantially less than the other stretch, as the street's actually wider here, but the right of way is the same. So evaluated that, and it's not feasible. I did want to also, as I didn't have it last time, but show the results of our parking study that we did over 1 week back in January. As you can see here, this is the weekday parking data. Not a lot of parked cars on Hammersley. Again, counted over 1 week in January. And then this is the weekend parking data. See a little bit more on this block between Whitney and Gilbert, but this is also a substantially shorter block than the rest. And the reason that we are still just proposing the parking pocket from Brookwood to Whitney is it is a excessively long block. And then otherwise did tweak the geometry a little bit at the Gilbert Hammersley intersection. Again, this will be part of the 2023 project. So when it comes around to have that final design, we'll return to TC probably this fall and can discuss this intersection again, proposing a raised tabletop path crossing here. And there is some potential to tweak this further, but basically did a conservative design to make sure that we accommodate buses here. And last thing I was going to show is we had a project survey for the project as a whole, and a question on the general proposal to narrow the street and build the off-street path. The survey closed just this week. We had quite a few responses. All in all, about 170. And looking at the total survey responses, we had about 63% support and 37% oppose. And then looking more specifically at the Hammersley resident only responses, we had pretty split of the Hammersley residents on Hammersley who responded, about 52% support and 48% oppose. And then in total, we had about 50% survey response rate from residents on Hammersley, people that we actually mailed surveys to. So in total, it's looking at about 28% of Hammersley residents support, 26% oppose, and 46% did not respond to the survey. So with that, I would open up to any questions or comments.
At this point, I'd like to go to registrants before we get to questions or comments. I'm assuming we have registrants on this topic. Aiden?
Yeah, there's several. The first one is Sam Pluster, Hempstead Road, opposes and wishes to speak.
Hi, can you see me? I do have my camera on, but I guess it's not.
Joe, I don't think the cameras work for members of the public. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Oh, I did my hair and everything. Okay. Well, I just want to say first, I am absolutely supportive of extending the bicycle path and improving the safety of the traffic across Whitney Way. Absolutely supportive of that. But what I am concerned about are the implications of the proposal to remove the left turn from Hammersley onto Whitney Way. I really appreciate Jeremy's explanation of the pilot to date, but I don't believe that U-turning at Dorset will become the long-term behavior of drivers. And I also appreciate the analysis of 12 accidents and that 6 could have been avoided if the traffic pattern were as suggested. But I'm assuming also that if we were to explore how many of those accidents were had speed as an issue, there's probably a significant reduction there if there was some actual speed enforcement on Whitney heading south. So at the tail end of last year, appreciate we introduced this new 25 mile per hour zone. Really grateful for that, but I would encourage the city to make any data available of its efficacy, because qualitatively, as someone who lives here and walks my child around it all the time, it has had absolutely zero impact. There's no enforcement, there's no change. So from the Beltline to Raymond heading south, you've got 1.5 miles of 4-lane traffic down Whitney, connecting 2 major routes that go past 2 roads that lead to a park. They go past a school, and there's absolutely zero speed enforcement. Whereas adversely, if you head north, the exact same length, 1.5 miles between the Beltline and Mineral Point, you've got 4 traffic lights, despite there being no residential properties there, no parks, no schools. So, and this is really at my heart of concern about the left-hand turn, is I don't think the learned and the continued behavior is going to be to turn right and to do a UE at Dorset. I think during the disruption, what you're going to see is traffic diverts onto Hempstead, onto Piping Rock, and these are streets that have sidewalks. If for whatever reason, the streets to the south and east of us don't, they have sidewalks and they connect to Sunridge Park. There are a lot of children walking around this street. There are a great number of young families. There are a great number of families with older kids who are 6, 7, 8, who will walk down these streets unattended to go to the park. And I'm really concerned about redirecting and diverting the traffic onto these streets that have absolutely no speed mitigation, no traffic mitigation in place at all. Next to the parks, there's no streetlights, there's no road narrowing, there's no crossing. On my side, on Hempstead, there's not even a sign acknowledging that there's a park there. So, I'm super supportive of the work that you're trying to do, extremely supportive of safeguarding that crossing. But I would argue that perhaps an RFB is heading in the right direction. I think if you could replace that RFB with a genuine traffic light, then what you could do is contain and calm some of that southbound and northbound traffic going over a blind hill, as Jeremy pointed out.
Your time is up. Could you please wrap it up?
Yep, that's it. I would love to know what your plan is if you start seeing diverted traffic and causing issues on the residential streets that butt up next to a park where kids are.
Thank you very much. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for the registrant? Okay, thank you. Aiden, next.
Next is Alexander Thomason of Jacob's Way, supports and wishes to speak.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can, thanks.
Okay. So I just have two points. During the last TC meeting where this was brought up, I think at least one alder and one commissioner pointed out, or at least pushed back against staff's recommendation for residents to park on Whitney Way with the argument that, well, Whitney Way is a bit too dangerous to park on. And I guess that kind of put my mind thinking, well, what are we doing to make Whitney Way a safer road to cross? And so the proposed modification to the Whitney Hammersley intersection, I think, does that perfectly. It narrows the lane, it allows for a wider median, it provides a lot of calming. So I think it's a great solution for the question of what are we doing to make it a safe crossing. The other point I wanted to make was, who are we building this infrastructure for? So there were a lot of comments that I read through in the meeting notes about, well, I ride my bike on this road as it is, and I feel completely safe. And I think that's well and fine, but I guess I want to put forth the question of, well, who are we building this crossing for? Is it the bicyclist that is comfortable riding on a 4-lane road and crossing a 4-lane road? Or is it for maybe a child that wants to cross the road by themselves on their way to school or ride their bike to school? And so I guess I want to put the framing of, for whom are we building this infrastructure? And I think the answer that the engineers that have designed it is, well, it's for everybody. For those that have confidence riding a bike, for those that have confidence crossing a street by themselves, but also for those that aren't as confident, maybe are hesitant to cross a road like this one without the adequate safety measures put in place. And so I appreciate the effort that's been put into it. I think it's a great solution. I think it's a great design. And I hope that the folks on the commission feel the same and maybe put forth that same question in their mind of, who is this being built for? So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Do any of the members of the commission have any questions for the speaker? Okay, thanks. Who do we have next, Aiden?
This is Pat Carney of Hammersley Road, supports and wishes to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
I guess my point is I'm definitely in favor of the project. I think it's wonderful. And I would really like to thank our alder for summing it up really well. And it's such a safety issue and I'm totally in support. And thank you so much. That's it.
Oh, thank you very much. Does anybody have a question for the speaker? Okay, Aiden, who do we have next?
Next is Susan Doyne of Hammersley, supports and wishes to speak.
There's no one by that name in the attendee list.
After that is Rod Lord, owner, Hammersley Road, opposes and wishes to speak.
Do you want to maybe watch for Susan, Joe, and Aiden and let us know if she does pop in? Thanks.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, thanks. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I guess a couple points with the current design. And I mean, basically, one of the things that's missed is, I know when you measured the parking in the wintertime, the bike lane use basically through mid-December to mid-March is also the same. It's like non-existent practically, like the parking. But the thing is, when we come home from work, I'm on the Whitney to Gilbert Road section. And when you come home from work and the city's plowed you in, and after you get home from work, you're trying to park somewhere so you can actually dig out and get up your driveway. So the loss of all on-street parking that's a major point with that seems to be overlooked. Parking pockets, you've already commented that there would be no parking pocket between Whitney and Gilbert. So there'll be absolutely nowhere to park to do this. And that's another reason it makes it worse. And in a way, I wish the design didn't have a curb, like there would be some flexibility, because the way it's set up now, it works just fine. I bike on it, I walk on it, I have no problems whatsoever. But if you put a curb barrier to separate the two lanes from the two bike lanes and the walking path, I was hoping there'd be some, I guess, a different design where maybe during the winter time we'd be able to park at least winter as a minimum. I think we'd always counted on having at least one side of the street with parking, because you came and took it away one side a couple years ago. Now you're coming back for more to take it all away, and it's like now you're putting that. It's too bad that we can't have some parking, without some flexibility in the design, like take away the curb barrier so you can utilize parking kind of the way it is now. We don't really need it. I walk fine, I park fine. I understand why you want to put the curb median there, but don't really need it. And I know everybody else has commented about the loss of parking and, neighborhood garage sales and family visits and events and all that impact when you totally lose on-street parking. And, as far as also the hard part with that intersection you're talking about on Dorset is that, years ago when there were car crashes almost every other weekend, because I live right by the intersection. And then we had the deaths when the whole, people were ejected onto my neighbor's lawn, and it was just horrendous. And when the city talked about it, they said, well, it's too expensive. That road is crowned so badly. And they said, well, it's just too expensive to remove the crown. So you're talking about an RFB, but people come flying over the top of that crown road, and they literally have no time. If you're walking, or biking, it's just a horrible intersection. The bike path almost needed to be moved up like 2 blocks for safety, so you don't have to deal with that crown part of Whitney.
If you could wrap it, your time is up. If you could wrap it up, please.
That's my point. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have a question for him? For the speaker? Okay. Thank you very much. Is Susan there by chance or no?
No.
Okay. Who do we have next, Aiden?
Next is Kathy King of Hammersley Road, opposes and wishes to speak.
Kathy's on the phone. *6, Kathy.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
We can.
Thank you. I'm at 5912 Hammersley, and I have a couple of items that I wanted to bring up. First, I'm opposed to any of those parking pockets if the owners of the property are opposed to them. And as an aside, two parking spots or 3, that's not going to make a huge difference for those of us who, have big families and events and stuff like that. But I can live without that. If one of my concerns really is the path being for both bikers and people who are walking. People come over the hill pretty quick and may not see who's, right in front of them. Same with people backing out of driveways where I am. Somebody who's a biker, and I am, can come over that hill pretty fast, and, we can easily have a crash there, I think. So I would like that to be for people walking only, as opposed to both. The other question I have is, are there other places in the city that have the grassy divide like this, to have the structure like you're planning to put in here?
I can just answer that real quick.
Yeah, this is okay. Your 3 minutes are for you to talk, and if you take up that time with his answer, you'll lose your time to talk.
Okay, well, I'll keep going then and hope it gets addressed.
Okay.
The emergency route up Hammersley Road here, the emergency vehicles, buses, school buses, and we see moving vans come this route too. That is going to be a problem, either with somebody getting stuck, like in an ambulance, or just trying to make it up that hill if there's like a construction vehicle, double parked to bring something into the house or something like that. So I was hoping we could get the bus route to change, and also the emergency route. I did try calling the fire department and the police department, but I hadn't gotten any luck on any answers as to that. The other thing about the grassy divide that I'm worried about is, if you have kids, the kids are going to want to run along the grassy divide, and that's so close to cars, that makes me nervous too. The other thing about the no left turn, I think, was addressed about the backup, the possibility of trouble there. And the other last thing that I was hoping somebody could address is when they will do the trimming of the trees. I think that's it. Like I said, I want the path. I want people to be able to walk safely. I would like to have some parking, just like that last gentleman mentioned, that those things are going to be issues for people. So I don't know if there's a way, like you said, to have at least parking on one side some of the time. That would be at least helpful. Last thing I want to say is Aaron has been great in answering all my questions, taking lots of phone calls, and I just wanted to say that I appreciated his help. That's it.
Okay, thanks. Does anybody on the commission have a question for the speaker? And Aaron, maybe you can answer questions or, maybe make some points later on after everybody's done speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have any questions for the speaker? Okay, thank you. And who do we have next?
Susan's here now.
Okay, Susan, go ahead.
Susan, you should see a prompt.
I did. Okay. I would like to thank Aaron and let's see, Jeff of the Forestry Department. They've been so available to answer questions and so concerned about all the concerns that I personally have and some of my other neighbors have. I really appreciate that. And I would like to say I'm very much in favor of the changes, even though I know it's going to be big and who knows what's going to happen with it. But I think it'll be safer for walkers, especially. I am in favor of the no left turn on Whitney Way. I think there's no problem making that U-turn. And I don't think that people are going to, it depends on where you are on Hammersley Road, whether you're going to make that U-turn or go down one of the side streets. I don't think everyone is going to immediately go down the side streets to make that turn onto Whitney Way. That was addressing Sam's concern. I do like to have Hammersley Road totally closed off, no left turn going in or out. But I can see that if you don't have the left turn going east, it's not as dangerous to make that turn going west onto Hammersley. So I thank everybody, and I hope that you get the contractors who are going to do this work, who have as much care and attention, especially to our trees, that Aaron and Jeff have. Thank you. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Does anybody have a question for the speaker? Anybody on the commission have a question of the speaker?
I hope that you get the contractors who are going to do this.
Okay, thank you. Who do we have next, Aiden?
Julia Hauk, Hammersley Road, opposes and wishes to speak.
There's no one by that name in the attendee list.
Okay, we'll watch for Julia. Is there, who do we have next, Aiden?
Dean Zimke, Hempstead Road, opposes, wishes to speak.
Hello, this is Dean.
Go ahead.
The question I've got is, I guess I've been gone a couple of weeks, but I heard about this change and I attended, I think it was the February 9th meeting, and I don't believe there was any mention about getting rid of the left turn. I live on Hempstead Road, but I did, after the call, send an email to ask, where is the temporary, while Hammersley is cut down, shut down while it's being done, where is the temporary flow of traffic? Because I'm expecting it would be going through Hempstead potentially. We're one block north of Hammersley. So, but now it seems with eliminating the left turn, it seems very likely that if someone's coming in, they will scoot on Brookwood and go down Hempstead. And let me tell you, when I try to go left on Whitney Way at the end of Hempstead, I usually go over to Piping Rock because it's wider and much better able to do that. Because I'm not sure if people are really going to go up and do the Dorset U-turn that the traffic engineer was talking about. So I guess I'm also not quite sure. This seems to be a big change on a big street that's happened, if I'm understanding correctly, within the last 3 weeks. So I guess I appreciate you having the hearing to hear about this, but I don't know why this wasn't brought up earlier in the process.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Does anybody have a question for the speaker? Okay, thank you. Is Julia there by chance?
No.
Okay, who do we have next, Aiden?
So that was everybody wishing to speak. I can read out the rest of the names that registered.
Okay, we'll open it up for questions from the commission members and alders, and also Joe and or Aiden, if Julia does show up here in the next few minutes, if you want to just raise your hand and let me know and we can give her 3 minutes, that would be great. So questions or comments about, unless Aaron or Jeremy, if you have any other updated comments in response to some of the comments made by the members of the community?
I could just real quick touch on a couple things regarding real quick tree pruning that will happen prior to April 1st, and Hammersley residents will receive a notice on that in the mail in the coming weeks. Regarding the grass terrace and the need for that, we do need a grass terrace between the street curb and proposed path. We need a place for snow storage for both snow plowing of the street and the path itself, a place for relocated mailboxes, trash pickup, leaf pickup, whatnot. And in addition, having that grass space between the path and the street creates separation for the path users and makes it a lot safer. The wider stretch east of Whitney is wide enough for the opportunity for some smaller tree plantings, which would further help with that. So a variety of reasons that we need a grass terrace, and as is typical throughout the city when we build sidewalk, as this is different, but kind of in the place typical sidewalk would be, we need that grass terrace there as well. I would also just mention that regarding kind of general traffic patterns in the area, that with this change, we can certainly see what type of issues or where traffic ends up in surrounding areas, and can certainly look to do traffic calming in surrounding streets throughout. So that's all for me.
Okay, thanks. Questions or comments on what we're seeing this evening? We're here for review and feedback this evening. I know this is the second time we've seen it. Anybody have any other comments or questions? Darren, go ahead.
Thanks. I know last time it was the first time I was seeing it, so I did get a chance to go out and just examine the area. And I appreciate the extra data from the pilot project and seeing where that ends up. And I look at this from a community development standpoint of every citizen has a right to public space, has the right to mobility, and the right to participate. And I really see this solution as meeting all those goals. That I really like the idea of narrowing the lane on the north side of Whitney and Hammersley to allow somebody to cross safely so that people can access the park space, those on the eastern side of Whitney Way there. So I appreciate all staff's efforts.
Okay, thanks. Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question on process. And you said this is review and feedback. I guess it was my understanding, since this is back for the third time, we're not recommending a design tonight.
Chris or Aaron, do you want to handle that?
Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are looking for your approval to move forward with this proposed design.
Chris, are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question?
Are we looking for approval? I thought this was going to come back one more time.
I think we are looking for approval at this point.
Okay. I had it down as review and feedback, so good clarification. All right. Alder Figueroa Cole, go ahead.
Thank you for everyone who called in to provide feedback. Aaron, can you please address Dean Simke's concerns about the left turn. How did that came about?
Yep, definitely. I forgot to answer that in my initial response. So I will mention that at the public meetings held beginning of February, we had two presentations, two meetings, same presentation. We did mention this proposal as a potential option. We didn't have quite the traffic analysis at the time of the public meeting, but we did mention and show an exhibit that this was, an option that we were considering, because with the proposed path, we knew we need to figure out something with the Whitney crossing. So that was mentioned at the public meeting with the note that it was going to take further analysis and you would hear more. And, I would say in general, traffic engineering done a great job looking at all options and doing the pilot study. This is the option that they recommend and what is feasible to do with this project.
Thank you. So just a process question. Are we going to have discussion after this part?
We're in the discussion phase right now. I'm sorry, okay. Go ahead. We are in the discussion phase right now. So give us any of your thoughts right now, please, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. So this is a comment or question for the commissioners. I have been looking forward to this meeting to kind of get your feelings or input or expertise on the left turn situation. So, I have been talking to Aaron many times this week about this and other others. So I understand what we're trying to do, but I would like to hear kind of your where you guys are on that regard, and also on the parking pockets. If you guys have additional input, I am all ears. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So let's hear from people what you think about removing that left turn and forcing folks to do a U-turn. And also, we talked quite a bit about the parking pocket last time as a compromise, retaining some parking, but in a way that that seemed to work. That's what I recall from the last. But other commission members, please respond to Alder's request. Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question, Alder. I think the key piece about the left turn restriction is that this seems to be the only option to make it safe for people walking and biking to cross Whitney Way. Because, we have heard about the crash stats that affect people walking and biking, but also driving. I'm assuming that some of the 12 crashes and some of the 6 that could be prevented by eliminating the left turn involved people in cars and possibly injure them as well. So I think there's just not a good alternative if we want to have people be able to cross the street, because as we have heard from staff, as we have heard from some of the speakers tonight and in previous meetings, it is this downhill situation. People go fast. We would like them to go slower, but that does not seem to be feasible. And so the only way to make it somewhat safe for people to cross is to shorten the distance and to have a safe space in the middle of Whitney Way where people can, you only have to focus on one side of the traffic and go into the middle, then you focus on the other side. And that way you should be able to get across safely. And so I think that's really a key piece, because every kind of sidewalk network or bike path network is only as strong as its weakest link. And so if you have great facilities on both sides of Hammersley, but people can't get across from one side to the other, then that's a real problem. And from what I hear from staff is, eliminating the turn is the only way to create that safe island in the middle of Whitney Way. I think your other question was about the parking pockets. I guess, it seems like staff has explored the options, and it's like we came up with this 2-spot pocket, which seems fine. And I think we heard some comment that, some people would like to have more parking, but then other people also say but maybe not in my property. If it means trees have to be removed, and that's the trade-off with tree removal. So, that seems like the current proposal. It may be the best that can be done in that context.
Okay, thanks, Harold. Bill, go ahead.
Thanks, Ann. I, as a longtime resident of this neighborhood, and I've many years have been concerned about Whitney Way, and so I was very looking forward to this project. And I think great work that Aaron has done. And while I may have at other meetings been, asking for further examination, and he's done that. And I've talked to him about that since the meetings and so forth. And as far as the parking is concerned, so I he looked at it, and I understand that this is not feasible. I think the crossing at Whitney Way is I've always had a concern about pedestrians and bicyclists crossing Whitney Way, and I think this by closing that left turn makes a lot of sense, and I'm all for it, and I think that project will benefit from it. So I'm after much consideration and work by Aaron and looking at things that by the other staff of what they could or could not do. I'm fully supportive of this project as it stands now by the design that's been brought forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Alder, go ahead.
Thank you for the feedback. I also want to mention, Aaron and I have been again very focused on the left turn and the hill there at Whitney Way. So I don't know if Aaron can chime in again on regards to the discussions we've been having about more signage and the light and all the other pieces that we can add. There was a caller that mentioned something about the park nearby. Perhaps we can also add some more signage about kids crossing parks nearby. I don't know, but maybe Aaron, can you elaborate on those discussions about those other components of the project, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's once again regarding this crossing at Whitney with the hill coming down northbound traffic, it is, visibility is not great. I think that a couple things, help to improve this beyond creating that wider median, but having that path crossing to the north creates some more space for northbound traffic to be warned of the crossing people on the path, bump outs, narrowing the street in here, which is otherwise just a unused parking bus lane, will create further street constriction and help further slow traffic. And then a big thing is installing the RFB and looking to install a taller than usual overhead sign to increase visibility. And then also during design, we'll work with traffic engineering to look at other potential signing at the top of the hill, and as well as other signing throughout to further reinforce the pedestrian network, especially.
Thank you. I just gonna add, there has been a lot of interest on this project, a lot of community engagement, and for the most part, extremely positive. I think for the majority of the people that have reached out to me see this as what staff intended, a way to have safe streets, to have equitable and inclusion in this project. So I am pretty pleased with what I've seen so far. So thank you for the feedback from the commissioners and all the work that staff have put into it.
Thank you, Alder. Bill, go ahead.
Thanks, Ann. I just wanted to follow up one thing about the speeding on Whitney Way. And while the discussion and many people are on the call regarding this particular project, I just for their benefit, I just would like to say that when we meet with Lieutenant Fiore on a quarterly basis from the City of Madison Police Department, speeding on Whitney Way is on the discussion, as well as obviously East Washington Avenue. But some of the arterials like Whitney Way are getting the attention from the Madison Police Department. Are they able to get out there every day? No, but they are out there, and they have been issuing tickets. So that's that's something that people need to be aware of. And I think it's, we constantly will keep an eye on Whitney Way, and because we know it's a problem area for speeding, particularly in this area. Thanks, Ann.
Okay, thanks, Bill. I think we've had a lot of great discussions as we've seen this this project, and safety first is our priority, and where we have focused our concerns. Staff is looking for approval of their recommendations this evening, and Harold and Darren, since we've had members add on now, we're at full, so no alternates would be able to vote at this particular point. I would like to entertain a motion, Bill.
I'll make a motion.
There's a motion?
That the project, as presented this evening by City Engineering, that it moves forward to the advance with our approval.
Okay. Alder Miazzi, is that a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Bill, did you wish to speak to your motion? No? Bill, did you wish?
Sorry, I got my mute and unmute and raise and lowering hands down. No, I have stated my thoughts that I thought, looked at this project, and I think this is it perfect? No, but I think this is I think we're far better than what we had previously. So I think this is a good project. Thanks.
Okay. Further discussion on the motion. Okay, seeing no hands, we'll assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm seeing no hands, so the motion is carried. Thank you, Aaron and Jeremy. And thanks to everybody who came this evening and gave us their thoughts as well. And for all of the written comments that we got, a lot of great engagement from the community. And Alder, we appreciated your email as well, outlining your thoughts. So a lot of great discussion and much appreciated. So thanks, everybody. Let's move on to item number 6, related to Lake Mendota Drive. So we'll follow our same pattern and hear from staff first. Then we'll hear from the registrants, and then we'll have discussion by commission members and the alders who are on as well. So Jim, go ahead.
Good, everyone.
And Renee as well. Hi.
So this is Lake Mendota Drive. This was previously before the commission for a little preliminary introduction back in January. So kind of a little rehash of where we're at. Over the next 3 years, engineering does have projects scheduled to reconstruct essentially the whole length of Lake Mendota Drive within the city limits. That's from Baker Avenue on the west to the city village limits over on the east. And this stretch kind of along the golf course is actually a split right of way where the north side is in the city of Madison, the south side is within the village of Shorewood Hills. For the most part, the existing street is more or less a rural section. It doesn't have curb and gutter, mostly no sidewalks. Variable widths where people have kind of created their own off-street parking areas within the right of way. The width generally varies from about 28 feet to 34 feet. There is a small stretch near the school. So this is Spring Harbor Middle School right in this area, Spring Harbor Park, Spring Harbor Beach right over here, where the street width, the existing street width is 36 feet wide. It does have curb and gutter in the area. There is a block of sidewalk on the westerly side of the street where the school is, and a short stretch of sidewalk in front of about 3 properties on that side. So around the same time this was introduced to the commission, we had our first public informational meeting, and we had also posted an initial survey to get some feedback from the neighborhood on a number of issues. Of certain priority in the neighborhood, they were concerned about speeding, Would like to see traffic calming. So this year was the majority of people were interested in having traffic calming included with the project. Speed humps being the preferred option. Some folks wanted us to just do everything that we could. We also had,
can you make that full screen so that it's easier to read? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. There it is. Sorry about that. You still seeing that? Okay. Wigged out a little bit on my end. A lot of numbers here, but we had kind of a question about what folks' concerns were as they are using various transportation options going throughout the neighborhood. So the item with the most moderate and high concern was speeding. Some people were concerned about cut-through traffic. And there's also a fair amount of concern about access to safe biking and walking routes for people of all ages and abilities. Of lowest concern were generally drivers not stopping or yielding at intersections and availability of on-street parking. A little bit of data regarding biking on Lake Mendota Drive. So this is streetlight data. This isn't actual counts. It's more of an index for comparison purposes throughout the city. So this is University Avenue as an index, in this 100 to 125 range. Lake Mendota Drive, at least up to Spring Harbor, had some data on it, 50, 60. It's a relatively popular biking route in this part of the city, especially in an east-west direction. It's probably about one of the top 5 options that are out there in terms of biking use. This data was also dating back to September of 2019 that was put together on this map. An option to consider with the project that we did introduce at our second public informational meeting held back in February 24th, I believe, was the possibility of including some additional bike wayfinding signage. This was something that we had posed in a second survey that went out to the neighborhood. I'll bring up some results on that a little later on. But this is another item for the commission to consider as we're thinking about the project design here too. One thing to note that as I get into the details of the preliminary design, we do think the possible street widths along Lake Mendota Drive don't really lend itself for setting up sharrows, at least as long as on-street parking is allowed in some capacity, just because we wouldn't have great locations to put those sharrows where they'd be in a dedicated spot that wouldn't either encroach on, an oncoming situation or kind of be blocked by a parked vehicle. One thing that came out of our initial meeting with the neighborhood, as well as through a variety of emails that were sent to us, was to take a look at an option that didn't actually include sidewalks, maybe a marked lane on the street. So this is something that we had considered, keeping in mind that when people are walking on the street under state law, they are supposed to be walking facing traffic. So we thought if this was something that we would do, we would have to provide a lane in either direction. And there were a number of concerns with this. It doesn't really provide any added protection for pedestrians. We will be required to kind of provide a dedicated travel lane in either direction just to avoid people having to move into and encroach on that walking lane to pass another vehicle. We thought this could lead to more potential for speeding just with a wider, fully marked street. It also added a lot of pavement in the area, looking at about 28,000 square yards. The existing condition is, I think, about 25,500 square yards. And it would also be difficult to achieve ADA compliance in terms of grades. And we thought this would probably end up being not a great situation for anyone with a visual impairment, just because there would be nothing great to detect on either side to make sure you're kind of staying within that walk-in lane. So overall, after taking a look at this and factoring in all those issues, this is not something that we're recommending with the project. So I'll exit out of that quick. I will bring up our current preliminary plan. So following the 2 meetings that we've had with the neighborhood, there were a number of things that really stood out to us of interest and priority to the neighborhood. Tree protection was definitely a high priority. As I mentioned, there was a lot of concern about speeding and traffic calming to be included with the project. There are a number of environmental concerns and expansion of impervious surfaces, but making sure that we're factoring in the environment and water quality as part of the project as well. And also, I should point out that we have received a fair amount of opposition to installation of sidewalks within the neighborhood, but we have received a fair number of people commenting that they currently don't feel so safe walking on the street just to get around the neighborhood as it is right now too. But I would say the majority of folks that have responded to us have been in opposition to the sidewalks. I'm going to start up on the northwesterly end. It's pretty long, it's about 1.2 miles. And I'll try to go through this in detail, but quickly. So up on the west end, this part of the project has a little bit lower traffic volume. I think on the initial map, our volumes between the city counts and the streetlight data was somewhere in like the 350 to 450 vehicles per day range. So on this end of the project, I'm going to bring up the full screen mode again. So up on the northwesterly end of the project, our preliminary design is a 24-foot wide street face-to-face. Well, I should also note that the neighborhood did prefer kind of a modified curb and gutter design here instead of the full vertical face curb and gutter. We are proposing like the Village of Shorewood Hills standard curb and gutter that has a little bit more rolled type head to it. Just kind of felt with the aesthetic of the area a little bit better. So 24 feet wide face to face with sidewalk on the northeasterly side of the street. As we kind of go through the plan, you'll see a number of trees marked with the black X. Those trees are trees that were identified by our city forestry department as removals due to condition, health of the tree, or ash trees that have not been treated. And then ones with the red circle and kind of that oval X are trees that would be additional trees that will be removed as part of this plan. So sidewalk on the northeasterly side, approaching the intersection with Laurel Crest. So there's a street end that goes up to the lake. These would be what we're showing right now, set up kind of like an alley entrance. So it'd have a driveway type apron with the sidewalk kind of built through the street end to really give priority to the pedestrians here. Narrowing down and bumping out the street down to about 20 feet face to face. So we can curve the sidewalk in. Now there are a number of tree removals in here, but there are a couple of larger trees that we would like to save. So this would help provide some tree protection in this area too. Then we kind of bring it back out to 24 feet wide, and in the 24-foot wide section, we would allow parking on one side of the street. The sidewalk is still just on one side, on the northeasterly side. We can also provide some bulb outs in the sidewalk where it fits. If a property owner is requesting the terrace rain garden, we can make that work. So there's a number of spots where we'll show that. And then the 5-foot sidewalk kind of meanders a little bit around some existing trees. I think the terrace width in here is typically about 4.5 feet wide, but we do narrow it down to about 2 feet. Is about as narrow as it gets, like around this tree, but generally is down to about 2.5 to 3 feet to kind of bend around some of these trees. Upham Court, another street end, kind of set up similarly as Laurel Crest. And then the 5-foot sidewalk continues on the northeasterly side. Here's another spot where we could kind of bump out the sidewalk for a possible rain garden. The rain gardens are not set in stone. That's something that we can either adjust if people want to add rain gardens where they aren't shown right now, or if somebody decides that they don't want it either. And then at Capitol Avenue, our preliminary plan does introduce a sidewalk now on the south/westerly side of the street. This is a spot where we could add it and have fewer tree conflicts here than we would having gone to the northwest towards Baker Ave. We also thought that this was an appropriate spot to start having sidewalks on both sides of the street, just because ultimately Capitol Avenue will provide a connection back to University. And this is where like the old Brennan site is redeveloped into mixed use type development. So having that connection up to Capitol Avenue we thought was appropriate. And then at Capitol Avenue, the traffic volumes bump up a little bit. I think the counts that we had were still relatively low, maybe around 500. But the counts that we had out of streetlight were up over 1,000, I think. So the truth is probably somewhere in between there somewhere. But they do increase a little bit at Capitol, partly because of that connection back to University Avenue. So we are showing a typical street width starting here of 26 feet, just with the added traffic volume, still allowing parking on one side within that 26-foot section. And then mid-block, we're showing a series of some tighter curves, kind of a chicane type traffic calming element, but also helps us kind of weave the street and the sidewalk through some of these larger trees to help preserve those trees. Through this stretch, parking would not be allowed, but we thought this was a good feature to help calm traffic through this area while also adding some protection to those trees. And then a little bit further south, we would widen back out to that typical street width of 26 feet. As we approach the intersection with Epworth Court, there is a wooded area here just a little bit to the north of Epworth that we are showing a number of tree removals. There are a number of trees in this area that would still remain kind of near the back of the sidewalk, but there are a few in this area that would have to get removed with this plan. And the sidewalk on both sides of the street would continue with a 26-foot wide typical width heading down towards Norman Way. There's a couple of spots, a larger tree here with a bump out down to 20 feet, help protect the tree. And also this is a fairly long stretch of fairly straight roadway. So this could be a traffic calming feature here as well. You'll see some of the sidewalk bulb outs in these areas of locations that we could add rain gardens where people had already noted that they'd be interested in one. And then continuing towards Norman Way. So at the end of Norman Way is where the Spring Harbor Beach is. We have a 26-foot wide street coming in. We have a little bit of awkward geometry just with the angles of the roadway. This is also the school buses make a loop up Norman Way onto Lake Mendota Drive headed towards the middle school. But we ended up with a little bit more pavement here. So we thought a possibility would be a traffic calming circle here just because of the layout of the intersection. Then continuing to the south. So just south of Norman Way is where the existing sidewalk starts on the westerly side of the street. So that sidewalk would remain. The street would be narrowed from 36 feet wide now. We're proposing 28 feet. And this is just because of that additional space necessary for the school bus traffic through this area. And then the sidewalk would continue on the easterly side with new sidewalk through Harbor Court. And then it would match into a stretch of existing sidewalk on the easterly side here as well. So there's 3 or 4 properties where sidewalk had previously been installed that we are connected to that. The sidewalk on the westerly side kind of bends around the sweeping curve of the right-of-way around the school. So we provide more connections here to have better crossings to the sidewalk on either side of the street. We thought right at the school possibility was a raised pedestrian crossing here. And then with the street narrowing and the sweeping curve, we do have some additional right-of-way space that was an opportunity to provide a large rain garden space that the neighborhood could maybe help maintain if interested in that sort of feature. And then extending a little bit further to the south and east. So this is Spring Harbor Park on the south side of the street. The sidewalk would bend around some existing trees. This would all be new sidewalk on both sides of the street. And then we also have the driveway access for Spring Harbor boat launch here. So through this area, we are proposing to narrow the street a bit, but still maintain that 28-foot wide street just because there'll be vehicles with boat trailers and things trying to access that boat launch and enter it in and out. And then as we get closer to Spring Court, we are proposing a speed hump. We have a number of speed humps proposed at various locations that the locations here were kind of set up to maintain decent spacing between the different speed humps, factoring in some drainage and avoiding some of the steeper slopes. We did receive a number of comments about kind of taking another look at those locations just to make sure that we're maybe trying to get them on the lower end of the steep slopes just to calm traffic as it's coming down the hill. But we're also trying to set them up fairly close to some of the higher pedestrian traffic areas and spacing things appropriately. And then the intersection of Spring Court and Minocqua Crescent, the solid gray lines are representing the existing pavement edge. So right now there's kind of a center island here where the neighborhood has planted a really nice garden. It's in a turtle shape. And what we could do with this plan is we could actually remove a lot of this pavement here and realign Spring Court a little bit to make this more of a typical intersection. And this would be an opportunity to either just expand green space, potentially add another stormwater feature, rain garden, something like that. And then as we get to Spring Court, our preliminary design is showing the sidewalk on the north side of Lake Mendota Drive ending there, but continuing on the south side. As we kind of go up the hill here to the east on Lake Mendota Drive, the grades get pretty interesting, where the properties on the north side drop off very quickly from the roadway, and the properties on the other side of the street do the exact opposite and climb up very steeply from the roadway. So we thought once we entered this area of Lake Mendota Drive, we'd probably only be able to fit sidewalk in on one side of the street, factoring in all of the larger trees and the grade implications. So this would be a 26-foot typical width again, with a possible bump out here around. There's a pretty large hickory tree that's right on top of the street edge here. So we bump out the curb, calm traffic a little bit, and have the added benefit of helping to preserve that tree. Continuing the sidewalk to the east, another speed hump right around the intersection of Risser Road. This getting fairly close to the top of the hill. So this was one of the locations that we have been asked to take another look at. But it is tight to fit in speed humps that would not block driveways here either. As we approach the intersection of Risser Road and Lake Mendota Drive, what we're showing with this preliminary plan is kind of narrowing down this intersection down to about 23 feet and actually having an angled crosswalk through this intersection and moving the sidewalk over to the north side. As I mentioned before, as we get east along the project, the City of Madison right-of-way is shared with the Village of Shorewood Hills. So the City of Madison portion continues to the east while it stops right at the golf course on the southerly side. And this Merrill Springs path here is also a connection. This is, a pedestrian route. It's unpaved, so it's kind of like a dirt path that people can walk down and access Merrill Springs Park, kind of down at the bottom of the hill. So we also thought that this was a good spot to try to get the sidewalk connection to, just kind of connect people up to the Merrill Springs path. And we're keeping the road pretty tight in this area and trying to match the sidewalk more or less around the existing street edge. A lot of that is to preserve a number of these large trees on that north side. But as we continue a little bit further east, there are some documented burial mounds in that area that we are trying to keep that within an area that was previously disturbed with street and driveway work and utility work. So we're trying to stay out of any new disturbance in those burial mounds. With this type of a project, the city does contract with an archaeologist to help us do research and take a look at the burial mounds and potential impacts. And we'll follow all state laws in terms of permitting and coordinating with the Historical Society as well. So we're just trying to keep that in mind as we're looking at our street design here too. And then this would be something that we would certainly continue to work with them on and adjusting the final detailed design as well. Then the intersection with Merrill Springs, this is similar to that Spring Court intersection where there's kind of a center island here. We had an opportunity to remove some excess pavement, narrow up the intersection a little bit, provide an opportunity for some additional stormwater features here, if interested by the neighborhood. Another speed hump, continuing the 26-foot wide typical section with some bump outs around trees. This is a spot that kind of due to some of the grades, we are narrowing this terrace down to about 3 feet, just kind of accommodate the grades and the tree protection here as well. And then this is the last City of Madison parcel on the south side. This becomes a golf course in the Village of Shorewood Hills. And then continuing and with some of these trees and the big drop down from the golf course to the roadway, we're narrowing up the street here to even 24 feet and 21 feet around some areas, protect trees and match into those existing grades. And then this is a spot with these red circles where there would be some potential for additional tree removals with this preliminary plan. And continuing east, The sidewalk stays on the northwesterly side, 24-foot wide street. A couple more tree removals. And then at the end of the project, this is a cart path that serves the golf course mostly, but there is a marked crosswalk here. So as we kind of enter the village of Shorewood Hills, we thought that this was the most logical place to end the sidewalk with this project. It's such a long stretch without any intersections or anything. And this was at least a spot where there have been some markings and indication to expect pedestrian and golf cart traffic for that matter. So exit out of that, and then a little bit of information with the second survey that we had sent out to the neighborhood. We wanted to check in to see how people felt about some of the traffic calming features, and also some of the street alignment changes to provide more green space and stormwater treatment opportunities. So this was the question for the changes at Spring Court, overwhelmingly supported by those that responded to the survey. And then similarly, there was a lot of support for the changes at the Merrill Springs intersection as well. So this was a question about adding stormwater features in those places that I mentioned, that there was support for using that space to do something better to help address some of the stormwater concerns with the project too. And then the other traffic calming features, namely the raised pedestrian crossing, the speed humps, the traffic circle at Norman Way, and that chicane in that block kind of between Capitol and Norman Way, also received pretty strong support. I did mention taking another look at some of the locations of the speed humps were requested. The speed humps did receive 60% support from those that responded. And the traffic circle was something that didn't receive as much support, only 55%. But like I mentioned, that's something that we could do with an area where we're going to end up with some excess pavement anyway, just because of the angles of the street connections. Also, another option that we have that if sidewalks ultimately are proposed and approved as part of this project, we could install some pervious sidewalk panels at select locations in the project as well. And that's something that we could take a look at as part of the final design here too. And then in terms of kind of process going forward, we are planning to have another neighborhood meeting after we've kind of taken some of the commission's input and thoughts on this project, update the design a little bit, have another neighborhood meeting, I think in early April. And then I think what we would look to do is have a formal approving geometrics resolution to establish the base curb and sidewalk limits with the project. That would come back to the commission again, and also through Board of Public Works and Common Council. So as we're moving forward with the 3 planned reconstruction projects, we kind of have a base street design that was fairly cohesive and well thought out for the entire stretch of Lake Mendota Drive. I think that's my presentation. Thank you everyone for listening to me talk for so long.
Okay, thanks Jim very much. I understand we have a number of registrants, Aiden.
Could I quick ask, would you like me to keep this plan shared on the screen, or should I stop the share?
Why don't you stop sharing so that we can see for sure that we have the registrants? That's the only way at least I can see that somebody's actually on there. And then you can maybe put it back up when we have discussion. Would that work, Jim? So who do we have, Aiden?
So first is Jeff Bauer of Minocqua Crescent, opposes, wishes to speak.
Jeff, you should have a prompt to unmute.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that I could control it. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. I have a point of order before I begin. Is a vote going to be taken tonight, or is this just to gather input?
It's for review and feedback this evening. As he just said, it will come back to the Transportation Commission for approval at a later date.
Well, I prepared written testimony, and I suspect many of my fellow neighbors have not. So I will simply submit my written testimony tomorrow, if you all will promise to look at it, and yield the time to other people that have not put anything in writing yet.
Well, we appreciate that, Jeff. We've received many written comments, some very lengthy, and I've reviewed them all, and I've seen a number of nods from everybody else on the commission that they have as well. So we appreciate both hearing from you in person and receiving your comments in writing.
Thank you. I'll get tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Hello.
Go ahead, Maureen.
Hi. I also submitted several written comments, and tonight I did want to speak because my comments have a slightly, just a different emphasis. I'd like to convince you for the many reasons that you need to slow down this project, and I only have a few minutes, so I appreciate your patience. For more than 20 years, I and my family have been stewards of a parcel of land that abuts Lake Mendota Drive across from the path to the sacred spring called Makama'i by the Ho-Chunk and Merrill Springs by the city of Madison. But we are not the only stewards of this parcel of land. The city also has roads on top of the land we habit. City people have been worked with me several times since 2004 when I first began my efforts to reduce the expansion of the hardscape, as we now call it, or the road around this parcel. They've always been great, walking the easements, walking the property lines, and encouraging patience. And so I do appreciate what the city has done. But it's not just my family and the city. Lake Mendota Drive and this neighborhood is situated on property that was inhabited by Ho-Chunk people until the mid-1800s. We have pictures of Native American Ho-Chunk families camping in my backyard. They lived in a small village around the spring. They probably picked the same black raspberries in nearly the same place that are growing in my backyard. The city, it's not good enough that the city simply avoid digging up more burial sites. The city needs to reach out to the Ho-Chunk Nation and seek their guidance. They are a sovereign nation that carries wisdom about living in connection with the natural world. And the city needs to seek that wisdom in order to modify Lake Mendota Drive in a way that is deeply respectful and in a way that connects us. In addition to the Ho-Chunk Nation and the city and my family, we are not the only stewards of this land. In 1966, the U.S. government created the National Registry of Historic Places for the purpose of coordinating efforts, and I air quotes, to protect America's historic and archaeological resource, end quote. If you traverse Lake Mendota Drive, you may have seen that sign posted next to the Three Bears effigy mounds on the Black Hawk Golf Course. And that might give you the impression that those mounds are the historical place. But that's not true. The actual historical place is the Merrill Spring Mound Group, which includes a large parcel of land that I'm sitting on, my neighbors are sitting on, and the city needs to consult the National Register because they need to seek guidance from independent archaeologists who are committed to honoring, preserving, and forwarding the cultural significance of this area. Quite importantly, the National Registry is under the auspices of the National Park Service, which connects me to my next point. I forwarded the commission a package that provides important information about Lake Mendota Drive's history as the first park and pleasure drive established in the city in 1892. And to just pull a piece of that, similar to Arboretum Drive, private residences have been established all around it. But what has happened is that the city is now following policies intended for city streets, and those don't apply to Lake Mendota Drive. It is a parkway. The people that live here know that. Yes, people always bring up safety concerns. How can walkers and strollers and wheelchairs share the road with cars? Well, limiting the speed to 20 miles an hour, narrowing the streets will make it even safer than it was just a few years ago when my neighbor, Judy Devereaux, was still alive. She had ALS, and she was toward the end of her life, was paralyzed to the point of being unable to speak and needing to live in a reclining wheelchair. She took trips down Lake Mendota Drive with her caregiver at her side and felt perfectly safe. So please reference that package and know that that Lake Mendota Drive needs to be recognized that way. And finally, I can tell from that ding that my time is nearly up. But
no,
I
it's already.
It's understand just one thing. I am part Indian, and with that comes pride in carrying forward a deeply rooted investment in the stewardship of the land. But that is not the only reason that I have passion for this project. I am part Indian, and I have several half-breed ancestors who moved from Quebec to White Earth, Minnesota, to claim Indian land and allotments from the U.S. government so that they could become pioneers of their race. They believed they were doing the right thing for their family, yet their race was not Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Chippewa. That race was French. Those moves were exploitative. There are wounds.
Chair, point of order. We have a lot of registrants. If you can, I mean, this registrant has gone over considerably. Could we please move on?
Thank you, Alder, for your comment. I was trying to find an opportunity to reiterate that you're past your 3 minutes, ma'am. Could you please wrap it up?
Sorry, I already muted them. Did you want me to unmute?
Okay. Yeah, just unmute and ask her to make her very last comment, please.
Oh, my last comment was I am passionate about doing my part to heal the wounds of colonialism and human-centric thinking, and no matter how this decision goes, the city will hear from me again. Hopefully in a positive, constructive, be part of this way.
Okay, thank you for your comments, and we did see the various written materials that you did provide. Does anybody have a comment or question for the speaker? Any of the commission members? Okay, who do we have next?
My name is Tom Jeffries. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, my name is Tom Jeffries, and I'm speaking in support of the Lake Mendota Drive project. I'm speaking on my own behalf, not on behalf of the Spring Harbor Neighborhood Association. However, my family and I have been active in the Neighborhood Association as officers or area directors since moving here 43 years ago. I strongly support the reconstruction of Lake Mendota Drive, though perhaps not with the current plan. If there were to be a sidewalk on Lake Mendota Drive, I feel it should go on the south and west, or what I call the city side of the drive, and not on the lake side as currently planned. I understand that the exact...
We can't hear you at the moment. Tom, we can't hear you right now. Can anybody hear Tom? No?
Looks like he just muted himself.
Can you unmute yourself, again? Please?
Star 69.
Star 6 times.
There you go. Go ahead, Tom.
Maybe a reception problem because he's unmuted on our end.
Yeah, Tom, we can't hear you at the moment. Yeah, you're cutting in and out.
Perhaps we can come back to Thomas and go up to the next person.
Okay, why don't we do that? Tom, we'll try again and see if we can hear you better later. Who do we have next?
Eric Enfield, Lake Mendota Drive opposes.
Hello?
Go ahead.
I want to start off with a quote. Believe it or not, every single homeowner thinks their neighborhood is special. That was Alderman Keith Furman in response to an email that I wrote him about my concerns about the neighborhood that I live in. I was born and raised in Madison. I lived here for 50 years. I spent the first 20 years on the west side of Madison, went to Memorial, had friends that lived on the west end of Lake Mendota Drive. I never in my life ventured into the Indian Hills neighborhood. And I don't know why I would. I mean, unless if you knew somebody, it's just, It's out of the way. It's not even really part of Madison. I imagine a lot of the people on the city council never ventured into the Indian Hills neighborhood. I imagine a lot of people that are on the transportation committee tonight haven't ventured into the Indian Hills neighborhood. And you wouldn't. Anyway, when I came back from college, I moved to the near east side of Madison, really hip neighborhood, cool neighborhood. And I thought it was so special. And it was special because I could walk to the grocery store. I could go to the restaurants. I could go see live music. And it was the coolest neighborhood. I could sit on my front porch and my neighbors would walk down the sidewalk and we'd wave. And it was cool. Most special neighborhood in Madison. Well, 4 years ago, my wife and I moved to Lake Mendota Drive, bought a house built in 1895. The abstract title for this property dates to 1835, before Wisconsin was a state, for the math. Anyhow, we have a native effigy mound on it from 1,200 years ago. Our property's on the National Historic Registry. So I started reading about the history of Madison that I was born and raised in a neighborhood I never set foot in for 50 years. And the history is phenomenal. Last summer, they took a canoe out of the lake, carbon dated 1,200 years ago. That canoe, and the whole United States is interested in it. That's fascinating news. That canoe came from the village where my property is, my neighbor's property is, extending all the way towards the golf course. The whole ridge here is all effigy mounds. So Keith Furman also said, and I quote earlier on, Lake Mendota Drive isn't being treated special or any differently. I haven't heard any justification for it being treated special. Well, Alderman Keith Furman and people on the Transportation Committee, I think there is a reason Lake Mendota Drive should be treated differently. Madison is a diverse city. They pride themselves in diversity, and that is what makes our society as a whole wonderful, diversity. We need to keep our neighborhoods diverse in Madison. Sidewalks are appropriate in some areas they aren't necessary. We need to slow down the process, do this properly. My time is up. Thank you. I want to close by saying I want to make it very clear for Jim Wolf, because he's having a hard time saying it, the proposed sidewalk ends at the 16th hole of a golf course. Nobody can walk any further once they get there. It is end of the road golf course. He dances around it. I'm saying it point blank. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Do any commission members have any questions for the speaker? Okay, who do we have next?
Marie Enfield.
Do we want to try Tom again, or
I've got Marie unmuted already. So
okay, go ahead, Marie.
Hello. So I live on Lake Mendota Drive, and I'd like to read a petition that's being circulated among my neighbors. I, like many of my neighbors, am feeling rushed by how urgent this situation is. This petition wasn't written until March 1st, and even though we haven't had time to canvass the neighborhood, we already have 30 signatures, and I can promise that number will grow. So this is the petition. We are requesting that the City of Madison modify its proposed reconstruction of Lake Mendota Drive. We ask that Lake Mendota Drive be designed to honor the Native American history of this region. This section passes through a region previously filled with effigy mounds and contains one of its most important historical features, Maki Mai, the Merrill Spring. The city's plan is to reconstruct the full length of Lake Mendota Drive according to standard policies that include creation of sidewalks and terraces. That will essentially turn the drive into Anywhere USA. This is unacceptable for this historically important section of Madison. Lake Mendota Drive was designated a park and pleasure drive in 1892. The lake on one side and the effigy mounds on the other side were key features of interest for horse and buggy riders as they made the trek to take on the waters of the spring. Now the street is a designation for walkers, joggers, and bikers because of its tree-lined canopy and rustic feel. What is missing is any recognition that the natural feel of this stretch of roadway is rooted in its connection with the Native Americans who were forcibly removed from it. We ask the city to take guidance from the Ho-Chunk Nation in developing Lake Mendota Drive. With their guidance, we ask the city to create informational plaques that provide historical context, erect signs that use Ho-Chunk names for historical features, and support any other specific recommendations that would connect users of this culturally important parkway with the history of the region. We also ask the city to design this portion of the street in a way that minimizes adverse environmental impacts to the lake, the springs, and the tree canopy. The design should honor the natural features that drew large populations of Native Americans to this area for millennia. The reconstruction of Lake Mendota Drive should connect our imperfect past with opportunities to heal today. We need emotionally soothing connections to the environment, each other, and our ancestors. The city's policies derive from a human-centric viewpoint, which asserts that safety, access, and inclusivity at an individual level are paramount. While these words are emotionally evocative, they are specious in the absence of data that deem the street unsafe. Our neighborhood survey shows that the very groups the city claims to be concerned are opposed to many aspects of the city's plan, including excessive hardscape. The city's policies derive from colonialist thinking that places individual wishes to exploit the given resource over the long-term collective needs of the earth and its human inhabitants. We ask the city to design Lake Mendota Drive to address the intersecting needs of the earth. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Does anybody have any questions?
Hello.
Okay.
We got Telus again.
You're back. Okay, let's give it another go.
Okay, I don't know why you couldn't hear me. I didn't do anything. But anyway, I have written some comments and sent them to Keith Furman, and I have submitted other comments earlier, but I'm probably going to make some more casual ones, although I strongly support the reconstruction of Lake Mendota Drive. And personally, I walk on Lake Mendota Drive just about every day that there's not ice on it and water on it. I do 2.3 miles, mostly for exercise. But frankly, it is so broken up. The only flat place to walk on Lake Mendota Drive is right in the middle of the street. If you walk on the curb, you run into either water or you trip over blocks of broken concrete. It is desperately in need. And I've lived in this neighborhood for 43 years, and I've been waiting for somebody to come in and begin reconstructing these streets, and it has not happened. Lake Mendota Drive, fitted, it's broken. And not only that, I would support subsurface refinishing of most, if not all, the lanes in Spring Harbor neighborhood. As many people will note in this meeting, Spring Harbor is largely free of sidewalks, but it also lacks curbs and gutters. And without curbs and gutters, many of the drives and lanes are badly pitted and eroded. In the absence of curbs and gutters, the city will not consider refurbishing the lanes. I'm going to say that, interestingly, Spring Harbor and Indian Hills, there are drives, lanes, courts, ways, trails. There are 3 roads, Risser, Merrill Springs, and Flambeau. 2 avenues, Baker and Capitol, but only Capitol is truly descriptive. That's an avenue. The others are just lanes. There's only one street, Blanchard. It's a dead end, half block long with only 3 houses on it. Now, this is an old mixed neighborhood, and it retains much of the countryside feel that existed when it was established. This is likely because it was annexed into the city of Madison after many of the drives, roads, and trails, and even the houses were established. The oldest home in our neighborhood is Hickory Hill House, a sandstone home that was constructed in 1842 on Hickory Hill Drive, which was its driveway. Initially, that driveway went all the way up to Old Wilton Road, I think even before University Avenue was in. There are many remnants of ancient occupation in Spring Harbor and Merrill Springs and Indian Hills, which of course is not named gratuitously. and these must be protected. To my knowledge, there have not been any open lots in Spring Harbor neighborhood for over 10 years. There has, however, been a great deal of construction, with older homes torn down and newer, larger homes replacing them, particularly along Lake Mendota Drive. The resulting installation of newer sewer connections has further disrupted the road service. Lake Mendota Drive clearly needs reconstruction. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Does any commission member have any questions for him? For the speaker? Okay, thank you for your comments. Who do we have next?
Tanya Cunningham of Lake Mendota Drive. Neither supports nor opposes.
Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. I also submitted written comments, so I'll try to summarize and be brief so that others that have prepared comments can go a bit longer, perhaps. So I have a couple of brief points. One is I want to address trees specifically. The project is not yet, but must specifically address the process of replacing any trees and plantings that will be lost. How will the selection and placement of new trees and other plantings be carried out? What guarantee do we have of improving the overall tree canopy? There are at least 54 trees over 3 inches in diameter that are marked on the project for removal, and surely many other smaller trees and bushes will also be removed. Decades ago, the elms were all removed, but there was no deliberate replacement to improve the tree canopy, and as a result, many less desirable species took over. Nevertheless, they are there. Many of them are quite large and provide a huge amount of shade, water take-up, cleaner air, habitat for mammals, birds, and insects, and even nutrients for the soil in cases where people allow the leaves to stay on the ground. I must express that I do oppose sidewalks. I oppose adding sidewalks to the rebuild on Lake Mendota Drive. Lake Mendota Drive does not deliver traffic or pedestrians to any destination save possibly the school or the park. The school creates its own traffic problems, which are not addressed. There are no stores, no restaurants, no service businesses anywhere in this neighborhood. There never has been an ongoing problem with conflict between all users of the street. Less development, not more, is what's called for. My ask is to slow the process down, get it right. Lake Mendota Drive is one of Madison's jewels. It is a treasure for current residents and visitors and something worth caring for to hand to the next generations. For the benefit of all current and future users, please respect that Lake Mendota Drive was created as a park, not just any normal city street. According to the guidelines the city claims to be utilizing, this process should be one that involves residents and their needs and desires and uses, and that has not happened here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Does any member of the commission have a question for the speaker? Okay, thanks. Who do we have next?
Mark Redston, Lake Mendota Drive, opposes.
Hi, thank you. My name is Mark Redston, and I live at 5536 Lake Mendota Drive. I grew up on Madison's East Side, graduated from La Follette High School, and then went to UW-Madison. And my wife and I raised our 2 children on the near west side for the past 30 years. And just last year, after years and years of running and biking and walking along Lake Mendota Drive, we moved to our new dream home in Spring Harbor. Lake Mendota Drive is in need of repair, but I'm here tonight strongly opposed to the street reconstruction plan that is being pushed through the city without adequate time to incorporate changes into the plan, and certainly without serious consideration of the environment. For the past 22 years, I have been the director of Wisconsin's largest environmental organization. We fight in the Capitol and state agencies and in the courts for water protections and clean energy and climate solutions. We work closely with local governments to implement state laws we help to write, pass, or protect. We also spend time educating leaders and decision makers at all levels about the often devastating and permanent impacts to the environment from decisions that they make in haste or plan to make without a concern for the long-term consequences. I also work for the organization that helped write and pass the phosphorus adaptive management rule that is used today by the city in Dane County to reduce nutrient runoff into Madison lakes. The city is ignoring that effort on this street project. This Lake Mendota street project will make water quality in Lake Mendota worse. This is Lake Mendota, a jewel of our city. The plan is to build curbs and gutters and pipes to quickly move stormwater to the lake. The plan is to later add green infrastructure after a design is approved, geometric design is approved. That comes much later, and it's utterly inadequate. The street plan that was proposed to neighbors has a net zero loss of pavement. We can and must do much better. The city is insisting on this street design, which includes installing sidewalks on both sides of an environmentally sensitive street, a safe environmentally sensitive street. That's just unreasonable. And frankly, Madison is taking a markedly different approach than communities across Wisconsin and the country. Just 90 miles away, Milwaukee is doing it differently. Our organization's been working hand in glove with Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District and the city of Milwaukee to install residential green infrastructure, rain barrels, rain gardens, big storm gardens, and new storm trees. And we've been doing this work in a connected way with the neighbors and the city, and always with consideration of their climate resilience plans. And unlike Madison, Milwaukee and other progressive cities are maximizing the amount of pavement they can remove, not just keeping it the same when they redo streets. Milwaukee puts money and effort into their neighborhood outreach, recognizing that if they want to do important work, they need people behind those efforts. Please slow down this project and include environmental factors in your initial design. Lake Mendota Drive is safe and environmentally and historically sensitive. But think more
Can you please wrap it up? Your time is up, sir.
Think more comprehensively and balance more factors than just sidewalks. Consider the public health.
Your time is up, sir. Thank you. Does anybody have a question for the speaker? Bridget?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify if he is speaking on behalf of his organization or himself.
Are you still there, Mark?
I'm here and I'm speaking on behalf of myself.
Is that all you had, Bridget? Okay, thank you. Anybody else on the commission have a question? Okay, who do we have next? Thank you for your comments.
Thomas Newell, Lake Mendota Drive, opposes.
Hello, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I think this project is necessary as Lake Mendota Drive does need some work. I appreciate the efforts the city staff and the neighbors have made to try and understand the project and all the issues that we are grappling with to make it successful. I believe if we do the planning right, we can do more than just deliver a project, but we can actually make this a great project if we slow it down just a bit. For tonight, I want to look at two issues that take me that direction. The first issue is process. What we are doing right now highlights the problem. I will speak in a 3-minute burst in this meeting or another public meeting to provide you thought and insight into this project and its impact. Think of the burden that is placed on me and my neighbors to speak to you in 3-minute bursts about complex issues that might give you additional perspective or make you think differently. Worse yet, there is very little dialogue. It's more like a chronological monologue, so a meeting of the minds will be serendipitous at best. As important, think how the current process results in meetings like this where alignment is not already done. Why are there 30 plus speakers? If you care about alignment, decision meetings and milestone meetings are not where alignment should be accomplished. That is chaotic, which results in delays, which you can feel. One more example of the flaws in this process. On January 11th, the city provided an initial review of the project. On January 12th, the Transportation Commission listened to the city and then some neighborhood comments, and then made a decision to have the project go ahead. How can a neighborhood of thousands of people come together to provide back to the city a reasonable response in less than 24 hours? This process is really absurd, or is performative art, but either way, it has made this project much more difficult. The second issue, but is more important for all of us, especially residents of many West Madison neighborhoods and people of Dane County, is a lack of vision for the environment in this project and a comprehensive plan that includes engineering and environmental requirements and solutions working together in harmony and improving our damaged natural resources, our neighborhood in West Madison. At one time in Madison, we dumped raw sewage into the lakes along with all kinds of junk. Now we pollute the lakes and well 14 with invisible chemicals. Well 14 is increasingly polluted with salt, as I hope you all know, and the rate of pollution has increased. Sodium concentrations in well 14 from road salt usage have tripled since 2000, with close to half that contamination occurring between 2015 and 2020, or 2015 to 2020. People with high blood pressure on salt-restricted diets are at risk because sodium concentration levels are 3 times higher than EPA guidelines. How many people that are in West Madison that are at risk are unknown. There's a correlation between hard surface salt usage and well 14 contaminations. Almost half the Lake Mendota Drive reconstruction project is in the 10-year capture zone for well 14. The City of Madison engineer assigned to this project, Jim Wolf, has been diligent about making sure that the amount of hardscape per square footage is not changing very much as he balances off competing priorities by trading street hardscape for sidewalk hardscape. However, this is likely not a one-for-one trade. The city is using sand mostly, if not entirely, on Lake Mendota Drive, and roads perform better with water drainage and sidewalks. The real challenge is that homeowners are trying to de-ice sidewalks, which are typically sit lower than the ground around them, but especially ground covered with snow, so water runs across them requiring salt. There is no reason not to expect well 14 and Lake Mendota will not be further polluted.
Could you please wrap it up? Your time is up.
Therefore, we ask that the Commission instruct city engineering to extend the project design process in order to use a comprehensive approach that considers the geometric and stormwater designs together so that factors such as water quality considerations can be more fully developed in the design process methodology. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Does anyone on the commission have any questions for the speaker? Okay, thank you. Who do we have next?
Peggy Scanlon of Lake Mendota Drive, who opposes.
Peggy, you should have a prompt to unmute. And Peggy, you should have a prompt to unmute, maybe hidden behind another window. There you go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I live on Lake Mendota Drive and walk, run, and drive on Lake Mendota Drive and also observe the traffic and pedestrians. My neighbors and I will be here long after this project is completed, and we don't want this plan as proposed. Lake Mendota Drive is a lovely street and is unique in its direct proximity to Lake Mendota. The tree canopy and green space makes it a lovely place to walk, run, or bike. There are very few cars there. There have been no pedestrian injuries or fatalities on Lake Mendota Drive. Many people walk or otherwise enjoy it. And it has a relaxed and rural feel. The majority of neighbors do not want the character to be forever changed by adding sidewalks, unnecessary pavement, or runoff into Lake Mendota. This is a plan in search of a problem. As a taxpayer, it asks for city money to be spent where it is needed and wanted. To repeat, there are not safety concerns here, and the majority of neighbors do not want these sidewalks. We are asking for this project to be slowed down. There has been no real engagement or responsivity to feedback. Our first meeting about this was January 11th, and the next day your commission had a meeting which was not announced at that meeting. Our alder has been unresponsive to the majority of neighbors who do not want sidewalks. He has not been open or transparent with the announcements of meetings or input. This has been a top-down process. We have been presented with a plan that appears to be a done deal. Our concerns. There's a significant loss of trees, which will change the character of the street and take away habitat for owls, birds, and other animals. We can't lose the shade, cooling, and canopy of these trees. The next point, the sidewalks as proposed lead to unnecessary pavement. We should be decreasing our paved footprint, not keeping it the same. Pavement leads to more runoff of sediment and salt into Lake Mendota. The plan for stormwater management is outdated. We should be much better than this. The cost of this project could be better used in other parts of the city, which actually do have safety concerns. As a taxpayer, I wonder why money is being spent on projects that neighbors do not want. The assessment to neighbors is high, as is the maintenance of sidewalks. This will force elderly or disabled people out of their homes. This street has historical and cultural significance, as it is in proximity to native effigy mounds. We need to consider the health of Lake Mendota. However, environmental considerations have been addressed in only outdated and superficial ways. The sidewalks at all cost movement comes at the expense of the health and beauty of the lake and don't consider the natural and environmental world. Why the rush? Slow down this project. The street is unique and has ecological and cultural significance, and the plan as it is proposed has excessive paving, tree loss, and will forever change the culture of this beautiful neighborhood. And most importantly, we have an opportunity to improve the quality of Lake Mendota through updated green infrastructure, and instead we are harming our lake. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comments. Does any member of the commission have any questions for the speaker? Okay, thank you. Who do we have next?
Matt Sieb of Camus Lane, neither supports nor opposes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening. My name is Matt Sieb. I live in the neighborhood and I'm a civil engineer by profession. Overall, I'm looking forward to this project as I agree Lake Mendota Drive is in need of reconstruction. However, as a stakeholder in the community, I'm concerned about water quality, and my goal here is to advocate for minor changes to the design process that will deliver additional benefits to the community. It is well established that runoff from transportation infrastructure carries pollution that impacts water quality. Specific to Spring Harbor area, the city's road salt at Well 14 study has established that transportation infrastructure is resulting in a negative impact on drinking water quality. Also, the city's winter salt certification program has established policy that seeks to minimize chloride pollution stemming from transportation. Currently, the preliminary design follows city policies such as complete streets and prioritizes facilities such as sidewalks over other concerns. This is evidenced by the project approach, which first establishes a geometric design and then develops other aspects such as stormwater facilities around it. This approach is out of balance given the demonstrated negative water quality impacts transportation is causing. Also, a focus of stormwater has been on mitigating flooding, not water quality. Discussion of water quality has been constrained mainly to one discretionary option, rain gardens. The design process can be adjusted to still fulfill city policies and be done in a way that further addresses water quality, in particular by seeking to reduce impermeable area that may be subject to de-icing. There's opportunity to use a more balanced process and priorities that consider how transportation facilities coupled with multiple green infrastructure solutions can result in improved transportation while reducing historical negative water quality impacts associated with it. The design should consider aspects like trade-offs between pedestrian facilities and green infrastructure that will improve surface water quality and reduce potential need for de-icing. A balanced approach still allows this project to fulfill policies that include expanded pedestrian facilities. Including green infrastructure and more emphasis on water quality are consistent with city policies such as the Green Infrastructure Study and Complete Green Streets Initiative. This will bring more value to the project, have beneficial environmental impacts, and still allow the project to move forward. Therefore, I ask that the Transportation Commission not indicate approval for the preliminary design as presented at this time, and instead ask City Engineering to revisit the design and work with area residents in order to develop a balanced option that includes geometric, stormwater, and water quality considerations at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Does any member of the commission have a question for the speaker? Okay, seeing no hands, thank you. Who do we have next?
Mike Jensen of Lake Mendota Drive opposes.
Go ahead.
Oh, I have Faith Fitzpatrick next.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Faith Fitzpatrick of Spring Court opposes.
Hi, thank you. Yep, just wanted to say that I'm opposed to the current plan, and it mainly is because of the lack of consideration for environmental impacts. And what I noticed, I had also brought this up at the Transportation Commission meeting, the first one as well, and have a little more details here to go into on that. One of the things, and it's been mentioned by Matt previously, is this disconnect between the street plan and then the stormwater comes after. What this does is it sets up to create the gray infrastructure from the get-go that the green infrastructure projects are getting rid of. And so it kind of puts us in the state of having gray infrastructure almost backwards from where we want to move. And so by having that in place first, it limits the opportunities for the green infrastructure that can go in. And as Jim has mentioned, there's some chance for rain gardens, but there's so much more that could be done with green infrastructure along Lake Mendota Drive. A few just kind of factoids of the Lake Mendota Drive area. There's 9 lakeshore courts along it that vary from 23 to 200 feet. And so that makes up 9% of the length. There's public lands that make up another 23% of the length. And so these are all things that could have a more integrated green infrastructure approach. And even existing along the residential stretches, there's one stretch, 380 feet, 6% of the length that is a good candidate for what's called regenerative stormwater conveyance systems. So by slowing the process down and then integrating the stormwater engineering with the street geometrics, we can end up with something that's much better for the environment, and then also meets the needs of the reconstruction and the street safety. And so my question back to the Transportation Commission is, have you seen any examples yet where we take a different approach instead of doing streets first, stormwater later, where the two are integrated up front? And if not, what are our chances of having that done for this project? Thanks.
Any member of the commission have a question for the speaker? Okay, seeing no hands, thank you very much. Who do we have next?
Oh, we have Mike Jensen of Lake Mendota Drive opposes.
Go ahead.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Excellent. So first, thanks for the opportunity to discuss this project. And as you see from the forms, I'm not in favor of the current plan, although I am going to propose a couple of solutions that may give you some better ideas, I hope. The current plan has significant issues and is very out of character for Madison, which I view as a very responsible green community. The major issues with the current plan are, 1, it's going to increase salt use, as others have talked. 2, it'll create a less safe route for pedestrians and vehicles. And 3, it's going to make seasonal management much harder and truly hurt the lake ecosystem. First, on salt usage, I think it's been well established that cement sidewalks, and today that's what's being proposed, that salt is used by the residents for walkways, and a cement sidewalk tends to have more salt than the roads, which are sanded today. Obviously, this could end up in the water supply, which has been shown, and salinity is one of the top issues in the neighborhood. Second, the current plan narrows the road by somewhere between 15 and 33% and puts parking on one side, at least in our section, down near the west end. In the winter, these sidewalks, especially the cement ones, are a problem with overnight melts and refreezes. Walkers don't really trust the sidewalks will be clear, and many aren't during the winter, especially in the morning, so they tend to use the streets for safety. These are typically the dog walkers and the early morning runners. This creates a single lane, which is also shared by the traffic. This will be much less safe during the winter because it's darker and you have less daylight. While this also happens today, the road is still wide enough to allow for safe passage, and we've had no incidents that I'm aware of or reported that occurred because of walkers. A narrow road makes this much trickier. The third issue is leaves. These typically contain a significant amount of the phosphorus, which is a major contributor to the lake algae growth, a huge problem for those of us along the lake. Today, the large leaf piles are set up on the road, ready for pickup. Unfortunately, the pickup is very intermittent, and any strong rain can result in these leaves getting washed into the lake and streams. The narrow road design is going to exacerbate this leaf wash. This is simply because the narrow design will have curbs, and you'll get a higher and faster water flow that pushes these leaves into the storm drains and into the streams and lake. Finally, I'm not aware of any environmental studies that have been put together to look at these impacts, the salt, the safety, and the leaf wash. I think there are some designs, though, that can mitigate these issues, if not solve them. So perhaps we could consider, instead of a cement sidewalk that's elevated with the curb, a permeable sidewalk at street level. This would solve the three issues. Permeable sidewalks reduce hardscape. They're already in use along Lake Mendota Drive in several driveways. They use what's called an eco-paver system. I'm sure there are many others that are in use, and I know the city of Madison has looked at these. If this sidewalk design was used instead of cement at street level, it would improve the drainage, not be subject to salt use, could be plowed as part of the road, would not make the leaf wash worse, and would keep safety as good as it is today. Or the other option is just to eliminate sidewalks. Thank you for your interest in your time today.
Thank you for your comments. Any commission member have any questions? Bridget?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, I don't know that I'm familiar with the grid design that he's referencing. And if it's what I'm picturing, I don't know that it would be accessible, but maybe, is there more information about that? Or maybe the city has more information?
Is this if this is a question for staff, could this wait until afterwards, or are you asking the speaker?
Sorry, the speaker has referenced it, and so I'm wondering if he has more information.
Yeah, I would be happy to provide you with these systems. The eco-pavers, I think, is what you're referring to, or permeable
okay.
drives. I mean, they're very available. Many cities use them. Parks, they're very popular. This is where the grass grows up through the pavers.
Right. I just don't think that would be considered accessible. And I guess that would be my concern with that. But I can ask more questions of staff.
Yeah, the city would probably have data where they use it. Obviously, they do use it on sidewalks in parks and they call it accessible. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But I think it meets the definition.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Anybody else have a question? Okay. Thanks. Who do we have next?
Catherine Eberhard of Lake Mendota Drive, neither supports nor opposes.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Kate Eberhard.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. We're new to the area. My husband and I moved here in October of 2021 from out of state. We were drawn to the area for the lake environment, the green trees, and the semi-rural feel of Lake Mendota Drive. We chose to live here realizing that a big one is that our taxes are going to be 3 times higher. We're paying 3 times the amount of taxes than we were where we lived before. And we're retired, we're retired teachers and living on a pension. In January of 22, or I think late December, we were notified of the Lake Mendota project. We were told that the street was going to change, gutters to be installed along with sidewalks and improved drainage. So we're in support of better streets, absolutely, and safety. I think all of those are very important. But we were also told that we had a significant bill that's going along with this. The timeline seemed to be set, and our experience of this project is moving so quickly with little citizen engagement. We came from a city that this wouldn't have happened. We would have met with our city council. Both my husband and I were engaged with our city government actively, and we would have worked through many of these issues. And there just seem to be so many large issues as far as the environment and Native American and just the historic issues, just the lake itself and Well 14. It just seems like there's quite a bit here to be considered. I guess one thing that I see is we seem to have an opportunity here, a once-in-a-decade opportunity to bring value to the Spring Harbor residents and all the residents that are served by Well 14. I mean, I'm just beginning to understand about Well 14. And again, I'm so new here, I almost feel embarrassed to speak, but all the people in the Joy of the Lake are, we need to deeply consider the water quality and what the city is doing. We have an opportunity as a city. It seems to me you would want to embrace this, to truly engage in an effort to actively reduce our carbon footprint, the cities, and reducing the impervious surfaces. I'm not an engineer, far from that. I'm not a scientist. I'm a concerned citizen that wants to feel that I'm part of the solution. And my request is that the process be slowed down, which I'm hearing so much of tonight, and that some of these issues are really, really addressed by the city. I think there's a wonderful opportunity here for us to all work together. And my understanding is that citizens are what make up a city, and so we need to make sure that we're involving the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any questions for the speaker from commission members? Okay, who do we have next?
Alice Erickson of Spring Court, who opposes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Speaking personally, we moved here to Spring Court in '79. We bought a real beater house because we saw Merrill Springs Park, which was kind of a beater park then, and loved it and moved in. And we didn't even realize then what a treasure it is. I totally support all the statements so far that have been said in opposition. But right now I wanted to switch and I wanted to make a quick statement. I'm the president of the Friends of Merrill Spring. It's a group that was created in 2015 to help care and manage the park. The first sentence in our mission statement is, the mission of Friends of Merrill Spring is to protect the waters of Merrill Spring and its associated historical structures. In our goals, we specifically state the following 2 items: limit runoff and contamination of the Merrill Spring from stormwater, and secondly, monitor water quality changes of the spring, specifically related to road salt. And tonight, I just want to ask the city to please slow down the pace of this project, as everybody else has been saying, in order to consider all the items that have been brought up tonight. Just a simple additional one to add regarding the park here is, I don't know how many people are aware, there's a storm sewer on Lake Mendota Drive at the top of the path that runs directly into the stream bed. And over the years, because of the roadbed shifting and so on, and us in the group sort of making a little berm, we've prevented the runoff directly into it. And how is the new street going to affect that? The group has spent many hours, much money, and a lot of elbow grease in maintaining this beautiful historic park. And in the last year, even working with the Ho Chunk to honor it by getting a plaque on a boulder when you enter it. As Maureen and Marie and Eric all mentioned, this is an incredibly historic area. We should be honoring it and doing all we can to protect this beautiful sacred waters in the area. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any questions from commission members? Robbie, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify, are you speaking on behalf of the group or are you speaking on behalf of yourself?
Both.
So the group
as a group, we
could we
together as the friends, as the board, we all approve this statement about the spring and the sewer and the waters. As a person, I'm just talking about having moved in here and what I feel about it.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify whether your statement was on behalf of a group, which would be reflected in your registration. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Robbie. Anybody else on the commission have a question? Okay. Who do we have next?
Kimberly McBride of Lake Mendota Drive opposes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I want to thank the commission for giving me this opportunity to speak. And I appreciate the hard work of the city in addressing the need to improve the degraded condition and address traffic calming on Lake Mendota Drive. We all want this. And I know the city has done their due diligence based on the information and the procedures that they have available to them. But there are other issues and concerns that the neighborhood feels have not been addressed. And the city needs to reject the current proposal and just slow the process down for all the reasons everybody has stated. And I don't want to go over it and over it because I think everybody's pretty much touched on everything. But I guess I'll just hit a few things. The city is on the brink of truly, I think, addressing their own street planning process to prioritize the environment for all neighborhoods through the emerging recommendations of the Green Infrastructure Study and also the Complete Green Streets program. Spring Harbor neighborhood has a really unique environmental concern due to its proximity to the lake. Inadequately managed stormwater runoff will continue to degrade the neighborhood water supply, which is well 14 and already stressed. And also, historically, the significance of the spring, which is downhill from Lake Mendota Drive. The city needs to reject the current plan because it prioritizes acceptance of the geometry of hardscapes over long-term sustainability issues. Net zero hardscape expansion just is not enough in this sensitive area. Stormwater drainage must be prioritized to create long-term sustainable improvements on Lake Mendota Drive. The city states that a narrowing of the roadway will reduce salt, but I've witnessed homeowners actually spread water softener pellets on their sidewalks. This was on Lake Mendota Drive, on somebody's driveway, and it spilled all out into Lake Mendota. I've seen it on Regent Street. People do not put less, they put more when it comes to their sidewalks, and this is not going to reduce the salt in our well. The history, you've all pretty much heard about the Native American history. It's a really incredible history that this section in this part of Lake Mendota Drive has not celebrated, and it needs to be really taken into account when we consider more road construction. Parks and Pleasure Drive. In 1892, Lake Mendota Drive was created as the first park and pleasure drive in the Madison area. And then it transferred, I think, to the city's park department in 1938, I think. Other parkways deeded in this trust have retained their really beautiful character, like Arboretum Drive, Vilas Drive, Yahara Parkway, etc. Lake Mendota Drive needs to be preserved as a historical parkway it is. It is not a major transit route. It is unacceptable for the city to impose a one-size-fits-all into this neighborhood. I would ask that you please vote to reject this proposal and please slow down the process. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Does any member of the commission have any questions for the speaker? Okay, who do we have next?
Lisa Dorf of Camus Lane opposes.
You hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, Lisa Reisdorf. I lived on Lake Mendota Drive from 1961 to 98 and moved to Camus Lane, where I currently reside, which is in the Spring Harbor neighborhood. I'm opposed to the plan as it stands. I appreciate Mr. Wolf's effort and expertise in what he's put together so far, but it's not quite where it needs to be yet. It's come about too quickly. I think the narrow roads could be actually more dangerous to bikers, walkers, and drivers. We're still losing 45 trees, and most of this, it's still adding sidewalks, which 75% of the neighborhood is opposed to. In surveys that we've taken, we've said that. Generally, almost everyone wants a new road. There's no doubt about that. But we're about 75% are okay with the low curbs. It's the sidewalks that's the issue because of runoff, because of salt. You've heard it all. Please listen to our neighborhood concerns. The city's accessible to all goal is admirable. We get that. We want that too. It's not practical or feasible in every single situation, and it should not take precedent over the environment or the lake quality. And our each individual neighborhood's goals and needs. Every neighborhood has their own little niche. When I say Willie Street or Black Hawk or Westmoreland or Maple Bluff, something comes to your mind. Well, here it's Spring, Harbor, it's water focused, lake focused, Indian Hills, because of our heritage here. It's really, really a big part of the neighborhood. It's why our family moved here way back. It was off the beaten path. No other neighborhood is like it in the city. We're at the end of a 2,200 acre watershed on the lake with Indian heritage. As people said, no bus routes, no businesses, no thoroughfare, no pedestrian accidents. We moved here for lake and nature, and traditional sidewalks were never a part of that. We are very, very different. Every single drop of water that goes in this corner of the lake in 6 to 7 years ends up in Lake Monona and then to Kegonsa and Wabisa. It's all going down that way. So we really have to keep track of what is going in here and how it's going to be affected. We need to think outside of the box. Madison is so progressive. I would love Lake Mendota Drive to become the very first WUNRF in the state, in the city. A WUNRF. If you don't know what it is, look it up. I can't explain it. It takes too much time. Walkers, bikers, cars, everyone walks on the same area. There's places to sit. There's places to play. There are no lines or lanes or parking spots. It's one big area of pervious pavement. Please, please listen to us. We could be so progressive here and do some things really, really great. I think just ma'am, you pay attention. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Does anyone on the commission have any questions for the speaker? Okay, who do we have next?
Herman Feldhausen, Merrill Springs Road, neither supports nor opposes.
There's no one by that name in the attendee list.
Next is Jonathan Funkhauser, Lake Mendota Drive, opposes.
Do you want to watch for Herman? And if he does pop up, let us know.
You bet.
Thank you.
Jonathan, there you go.
Yeah.
You are unmuted and we can hear you.
Well, I appreciate Lisa Reestor's comments. I actually haven't had time to look up what a Wuesdorf is, but I'm surprised the Transportation Committee knew that off the top of your head. There was no questions about that. So obviously I'm opposed. I'm opposed to this for quite a few reasons, but I'll just hit on like three of them right now. One of them is at 6:06 p.m. tonight, one of Jim Wolf's comments was a majority of the responses to the petition are against the sidewalks. Then Lisa Reestorf also said it's like 75% of the people are opposed to the sidewalks. Why is that inconsequential to the overall plan? We live in a democracy. I grew up in Madison. I went to Madison Memorial. I've lived my whole life here for 40-some years. I think that if people are saying we're against this, that the Transportation Committee and should be listening to that. That's number one. Number two, we live 4 or 5 houses from the end of the sidewalk on the eastern end. So this sidewalk is going to disappear into the Shorewood neighborhood, and there's no continuing sidewalk there. It just ends. So it's like the yellow brick road to nowhere. Only this yellow brick road has to be paid for by the people that live there, and it doesn't do us any good. We have little kids that are, no, they're not that little, but they're going to be going to middle school at Spring Harbor, and we play in the neighborhood. We bike on the roads. We've lived here for 5 years, and we have no concerns about traffic. People drive slow. They drive respectfully. We have traffic calming features on Lake Mendota Drive right now. You know what they're called? They're called potholes. And yeah, it's a little bumpy, but people drive slow because of the condition of the road. Could it be more smooth? Absolutely. But repaving it and making it look like the suburbs that grew up around Madison when I was growing up, I didn't choose to live in this neighborhood. If I wanted to live in suburban USA, we could have moved to suburban USA, but we love the area around here. And we love the fact that it feels natural, and putting a bunch of different, sidewalks around. People choose to put salt on their sidewalks because they're afraid of the legal system where you're liable if your sidewalk isn't, ice free and somebody could slip and fall, and people oversalt their sidewalks. That's a fact. I've been running and biking my whole life around here. Bikers don't bike on sidewalks, and people that are actually running, they're not running on a sidewalk. They're running where there's the traction is better, 12 months out of the year. And these sidewalks aren't really going to solve anything, especially because they don't go anywhere. Okay, that's really the main point. One last point. The right of way is, someone said, oh, we're on the north side of the lake. So the right of way is where the houses are, but the city must have a right of way with Shorewood and Blackhawk Country Club. I don't understand why the country club, where there's plenty of land, the sidewalk couldn't go there. If there's a right of way on the north side of the street, there should be a right of way on the south side of the street as well. So that's my final point. I'll turn it over to people that are much smarter than I am, but I feel pretty passionate about this. So thank you very much for the time. Obviously, my vote is, or not vote, but I'm very against the current proposal. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Does any member of the commission have a question for the speaker? Okay, who do we have next?
Thomas Voss of Lake Mendota Drive opposes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, so many good speakers commented on so many of the points that I'd like to, so I'm going to be brief. I've been on Lake Mendota Drive for 60 years as a young child, parents building 2 houses, and myself in my current house for 40 some years. I'd like to kind of zero my comments to Lake Mendota Drive, Norman Way to Capitol Avenue, focus that. I guess I'd comment about, I guess I'd say I'm in favor of improving the street. I'm opposed to the plan. I'm opposed to the sidewalks. I'm opposed to the parking. City policy on sidewalks. I guess I'd like to say that not all city policies can be applied to every neighborhood. The engineers appear to favor the sidewalks. That's the only plan they've drawn. And now they've drawn sidewalks on both sides of that area that I spoke of. The 2 sidewalk concept is overkill. One sidewalk would save on hard surface and still create a city policy that they probably could live with, even though I'm opposed to all sidewalks. I also don't believe that this area is a safety problem. I've never heard of an accident, never heard of any endangerment. People walk all over this area, and we're doing an awful lot of things calming the street. I'm not so sure where all of that's coming from, but this calming of the street is going to take away all of our neighborhood parking. We're going to be down to parking on one side in most areas and both sides in some areas. I have 2 family members that live in that area near Capitol Avenue, where they will have no parking on either side of their streets. This is just not acceptable. I would love to see a city engineer to come back with a plan to draw at least only one sidewalk between Norman Way and Capitol Avenue, and then rework the streets and see what that's all about. Everybody keeps saying, our alderperson, city engineers, that everybody's listening. I'm not so sure they are. I'd like to see a plan that we could then comment on and kind of zero in on most of the topics that everybody here seems to be in favor of. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Does anyone on the commission have a question for the speaker? Okay, who do we have next?
David Eberhard, Lake Mendota Drive, neither supports nor opposes.
This is very refreshing. It's all nonpartisan. We moved here from out of state in October because of COVID, because of the cold. I have not really gotten to know a great deal of our neighbors. And then come January, I watch the video that Mr. Wolf ran, and I found it disappointing that this was happening. And the message was that this was all what we wanted. I found that hard to believe. And everyone seemed so professional and positive. And yet, once that was over, I then spoke with the neighbors, and every one of them were opposed or downright angry about what happened. Or, as one neighbor said, the cake is baked. He said that sadly. And I said, gee, what kind of place is this? And we're going to have to pay a hefty fee for this, and I don't know that we want this. This place has character, it has history. In November, when that Ho-Chunk canoe came in, and I sat with my neighbors and watched that. This is national news. I said, oh my God, look at this. And then Maureen is, who I don't know, but she's talking so knowledgeably about the American Indian community in this neighborhood. There's a disconnect going on. It's a disconnect between Mr. Wolf's program and what the neighborhood wants. That's not healthy. The people here need to be happy, and they are in this neighborhood. And yes, I guess there can be some improvements, but yes, the project needs to be slowed down. And I think Mr. Wolf is a fair man. I sent him a comment after the first meeting. He responded immediately, quite nicely, but announced that he would be out of the office for a month afterwards, which I felt disappointed because I had some more things to talk with him about. Yet I feel that he is open and listening and wants to work with us. And that's what we need. We need cooperation. We need to have both entities somehow come together so that we can create a great neighborhood. And wow, I'm really pleased that we came here. I didn't know that we had such dynamic people that are willing to step out and say the things they're saying tonight. Thanks, all of you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody have a question? Anybody on the commission have a question for the speaker? Okay, who do we have next?
Michael Rosenblum, Merrill Springs Road, neither supports nor opposes.
Hello. Thanks to all for attending tonight. And I'd like to thank the city staff for the work that they've put in already. And I'm glad to hear that there will be further opportunities for discussion and input. And I think there are a lot of areas that have been identified that are of common interest, from concern for the history of the space, the preservation of trees, the traffic calming, green spaces, the water quality and drainage, and of course, just the state of the road. I'd also like to thank the commissioners, and I'm saying that from a place where I know what I speak, having served on the Landmarks Commission and the Urban Design Commission. And I'll be brief, and it's with those lenses that I come here tonight. And that's kind of a lens of historic preservation and the aesthetic feel. And this neighborhood, I think you've heard over and over from the neighbors, has a unique feel to it. We have a space that is beautiful, natural, and also historic. And I think one thing that has been lost is the continuity of that space from the university, which has done a good job recognizing that history, through Shorewood Hills, where we have mounds preserved there too, and then the city of Madison. And I think it's an opportunity to really step back and examine this space and its continuity, its place in history, and go from there. So that's the point I wanted to make. I think you've heard a lot of the other concerns from the neighbors, and I'll cut it short here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And anybody have a question? Okay, who do we have next?
Leslie Hurge of Lake Mendota Drive, who opposes.
Hi, it's Leslie Hurge, and I live along what the city refers to as the eastern segment of Lake Mendota Drive. It's on the top of the hill, and it's the most historic segment of Lake Mendota Drive, other than the still rustic portion that runs through the university's Lakeshore Preserve. Alder Furman has repeatedly stated at meetings over the past several weeks that the goal is to reconstruct Lake Mendota Drive for the next 50 to 75 years. And if that's truly the city's goal, it is unreasonable to design a major reconstruction project in an area as environmentally and culturally sensitive as Spring Harbor from plan conception to plan approval in approximately 6 weeks. The current and future residents along Lake Mendota Drive and the Spring Harbor neighborhood deserve better from the city and its representatives. I'm sure this committee hears from many of its citizens that their neighborhood is special, unique, but we actually have the facts to support it. To name just a few, Lake Mendota Drive's inception as a park and pleasure drive, Native American effigy mounds and a sacred spring, the historic tree canopy, adjacency to Lake Mendota, and location over an impaired well. Although my time is limited and I had some other comments, I have been asked by many of my wonderful neighbors here who care about this neighborhood to say a couple other things about some petitions. So on February 28th, 2022, the Spring Harbor Neighborhood Association issued a resolution where the Spring Harbor Neighborhood Association membership was concerned about the speed of the design of the Lake Mendota Drive reconstruction project. And the association officially requested the city of Madison to slow down the Lake Mendota Drive reconstruction project timeline to allow the Spring Harbor Neighborhood Association to work with the city on the Lake Mendota Drive design plan. And that has been submitted to the city. In addition, over 200 neighbors on and off Lake Mendota Drive have submitted a petition asking for the process to be slowed down and to ensure that the plan attends to the environmental and historical and cultural concerns related to the project. As such, I asked this commission not to vote on the city engineering's reconstruction plan yet, but to provide instruction to city engineering to work with the Spring Harbor Neighborhood Association Lake Mendota Drive Ad Hoc Committee to design an integrated road construction plan that protects both the history, environment, and the waters of Lake Mendota Drive and the Spring Harbor neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Does any member of the commission have a question for the speaker? Okay, thanks. Who do we have next?
Colin Punt, Lake Mendota Drive, supports.
Colin, there you go.
All right, I got it. Sorry about that. Good evening, alders and commissioners. My name is Colin Punt. I own a home on Lake Mendota Drive. I've already written to the commission in support of this project, and my comments are posted on Legistar, so I won't repeat those. But I would say that Lake Mendota Drive is in sore need of a complete reconstruction. The plan presented by the engineering division is a well thought out, responsible plan. I have 2 young children under the age of 5, so I'm very concerned about the traffic calming, and I'm very anxious to see sidewalks included. Lisa mentioned reconstructing Lake Mendota Drive as a wooner, and I'd actually love that, but I'd guess that would generate even more opposition than the proposed plan. Although I would personally prefer sidewalks on both sides of the street, I appreciate that there is a continuous sidewalk along the entire length of the street, and congratulate the designers for being creative and fitting them in. I'm strongly supportive of the traffic calming measures, including the narrow roadway, the traffic circle at the intersection with Norman Way, raised crosswalks near the school, and speed humps to slow traffic that kind of comes flying down the hill east of Spring Harbor. The roadway avoids almost all of the trees, keeping the removal to a minimum. I'm also pleased that the plan represents no net addition of paved surfaces, and that the large rain gardens and the stormwater management best practices will be incorporated into the design, which will have an overall positive impact on the runoff situation. As a city planner in the city's planning division, I will note that city policy clearly supports the inclusion of sidewalks for all street reconstructions, particularly for collector streets such as Lake Mendota Drive. The city's transportation plan, Madison in Motion, as well as the Sustainable Madison plan and the comprehensive plan, which is the overarching entire city of Madison, all recommend construction of sidewalks on new streets and reconstructions where they do not exist, with the comprehensive plan of Madison in Motion going as far as identifying Lake Mendota Drive as a Tier 1 priority street. Finally, I feel like I must point out there's been a lot of misinformation being disseminated within the Spring Harbor neighborhood as a whole There have been several mentions of salt use on sidewalks, but I live on one of the few blocks that currently does have a sidewalk, and no one uses salt here. There is a misunderstanding of the way that cultural features such as the mound groups, how stormwater management and how capital improvements are handled in the city process. But misinformation is certainly not a reason to delay the project. It's clear to me that the Transportation Commission must approve this plan, and I thank you for supporting it. I would be happy to answer questions during the discussion.
Does any member of the commission have a question for the speaker? Thank you for your comments. Okay, thanks. Who do we have next?
Bill Michalski, Lake Mendota Drive, opposes.
Hi.
Hi, Phil. You are unmuted.
I'm opposed to this project.
You may want to turn off the microphone on your computer while you speak.
Sidewalk and the adverse impacts to how that's going to have our neighborhood look. They don't provide any additional safety features. We've lived on the street since 1994, and we don't know of any accidents. I think there's a red herring saying that we need all these sidewalks for feeders into the school. It's a magnet school that buses most of the kids into that area. It just seems like just a bad solution. And just because the city policy and the city, if we're going to reconstruct the road, we have to have a sidewalk. That just doesn't seem to fit our neighborhood. And I think that's borne out by the surveys of the neighborhood. I would ask that you not approve this until we completely have discussions with the city staff. I think they've done a decent job on trying to save trees, but what we need is this road reconstructed. We don't need sidewalks. I have a question I'd like to get answered by city staff. I asked the question before and it wasn't answered. How much money can we save by eliminating the sidewalks? And if they could provide that information to the Transportation Commission, I think it'd be helpful to see how much money we could save and use in other places in the city. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Does anyone on the commission have a question for the speaker? Okay, who do we have next? Has Herman popped up yet?
I don't see him.
Okay, thanks.
Carol Michalski, Lake Mendota Drive, opposes.
Carol, you should have a prompt to unmute.
Okay, am I unmuted now? Unmuted?
Yes.
Okay.
I can hear you.
My husband just spoke, but I have a little different viewpoint also. I really have some of these assumptions that are made on our needs, and the processes seem very faulty. At one of the presentations, we are told that the city had come up and observed Lake Mendota Drive. And from that late fall visit, they had determined that we don't fully utilize our parking. Well, Lake Mendota Drive needs to be observed on a summer afternoon when parking is an absolute premium. Now, Jim Wolf put up a thing that said parking concerns are low on the list of concerns. I don't know who they asked, but anybody who lives on the street, parking is definitely a concern. Maybe someone lives 3 blocks away. It's not a concern for them. But we have families who come over and everyone, you need to keep our parking. On the city survey, our neighborhood clearly declared that we didn't want sidewalks and we wanted to keep our trees. The city's solution to that is we will save your trees, but we will cut your parking by more than a half. Interesting that we were never asked where our priority for parking, trees, sidewalks. Parking really was all of a sudden thrown upon us. And I am one of the lucky few who live in the 5500 block of Lake Mendota Drive, and they're proposing a chicane there. Well, along with that, it comes no parking on either side. And the gentleman before said, "Oh, I think that's great." Well, he could like to come down and live where we live and have no parking. And when it was presented in February, the master plan, that whole thing was brushed over. "Oh, we're going to have a chicane here." I found on the plan that said no parking. I think there's very little transparency with that. And I think you need to ask the people, what are their needs on the street? We didn't choose to live in downtown Madison and fight for parking every day with our neighbors. We have a very active, welcoming community. People have lots of company. We need parking. The city also said part of the reason for sidewalks was that Spring Harbor School is in the neighborhood. Well, it's not a neighborhood school. It's a magnet school. And if you look at the 8 or so buses that are there every day, I don't know how many kids are at the school, but I would say a very, very high percentage are bussed in. And so I think you have to take all of, and there are sidewalks down there by that. I think that's just another thing to throw out there to justify it. And I think I haven't heard anyone mention how people come to our neighborhood, and our neighborhoods love walking on a wide street. They walk 3 abreast, they walk in groups, and it's not like the city near west side of Madison where 2 people can fit on a sidewalk and there's no conversation, there's no sociability. So I think this fear of a hypothetical accident instead of the reality.
Your time is up.
Anyway.
Your time is up. Could you please wrap it up?
Yes. So I really wish you would slow this project down, hear us, research the reality of what the project will do to this neighborhood, and not force a cookie cutter policy upon us. Compromise is not.
Anybody have a question for the speaker? Okay, thanks. Who do we have next?
So that is the last person wishing to speak.
So did Herman not pop on?
There's no one by that name in the attendee list.
Okay, thank you. All right. So we've heard a lot. First, let me just clarify before we get comments from anybody. My understanding, Jim, was that you're looking for feedback this evening and input and not approval. Is that correct?
That is correct. This is the same plan that we had presented to the neighborhood as a preliminary design to get input there, and also from the commission. That we can take those comments and make edits and hopefully come back a little later on.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that for everybody. Alderman Yazzie, go ahead.
I just wanted to hear about the community engagement that has been done. You know, voices of our people, our residents really resonates with me. So I wanted to hear about any public engagement that has been done for this project.
Yes, certainly. So we've had 2 public informational meetings. They're virtual. One was January 11th. One was February 24th. And then we also presented at that meeting on the 11th, as well as on the project website, that we're going to have an introduction discussion with the Transportation Commission on January 12th as well. We sent out a pre-design survey to the neighborhood, both to try to get some information about any particular issues on their property, drainage problems, accessibility issues, some of those questions. But we also had questions out there about concerns, transportation-related concerns throughout the neighborhood, which was on one of those earlier slides that I had presented on. Then we put together the preliminary plan based on the initial input that we had received with some of the priorities from the community, primarily some of those environmental concerns over the amount of impervious area and tree protection. Put together this preliminary plan, posted on the project website, presented at the neighborhood meeting on February 24th. And then we sent out a second survey to get some more direct input, especially as it relates to some of the traffic calming features, how they felt about some of the particular intersection changes, if they supported doing stormwater features in those areas, and also seeking volunteers because the city is at a point right now where we can't maintain a lot of these heavily landscaped areas. We're just not able to dedicate resources to get out there regularly. So we're also looking for people to volunteer to help maintain some of those areas if they would get installed. I presented some of those preliminary results earlier as well. And then we're here seeking the commission's input and certainly taking more feedback from the neighborhood as well. And we'll have another neighborhood meeting, I think early April, maybe April 4th is what we're tentatively looking at. And then we're hoping to come back following that meeting with an improving geometry resolution to help establish our final curb lines, sidewalk limits, to give us some groundwork to really start looking at some of the details, setting grades, figuring out where drainage can go, seeing what we can do with some of these stormwater features, and kind of getting deeper into design. And then each of the individual reconstruction projects going forward will have at least an additional public meeting as well as public hearings at the board and council too.
So two last questions. How do you feel that the residents was receptive to the community meeting? And also, did you get a hold of Dan Brown? I believe he's the executive director of the Ho-Chunk Nation.
I have not reached out to the Ho-Chunk Nation yet. That was a request previously. And, when it comes to the street design, we are kind of looking to follow city policies and getting input from our commissions and common council and the Board of Public Works to help establish public rights of way. But we do think that there's probably an opportunity that we can do something, especially around that Merrill Springs path area, to honor the heritage of the area too. In general, I think a lot of the comments I received were, I think some people were originally very concerned over the potential tree loss that could happen from our original meeting where we introduced it. So I think some people were relieved that wasn't as bad as they had maybe assumed it could be. There was still some opposition to sidewalks, but in general, the city has policies that we want our streets to be safe and accessible for everyone, and that has been kind of the response, at least to the specific sidewalk concern. But we are looking to include like the pervious sidewalks where they make sense as well, and we'll continue to look at some of those more detailed things going forward.
Thank you.
That's all you had, Alder? Okay, Denise, go ahead. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Thanks, Jim. A question first and then a comment. Can you tell me a little bit about the permeable sidewalks? I'm interested in knowing about them from an accessibility standpoint for particularly folks using mobility devices, those of us that do cane travel. How accessible are they?
They would meet all ADA requirements. What they are is a precast pervious concrete panel. So it's cured in things in a factory setting, and then it's got kind of small pores on it. So it's not going to have like big gaps the way like a pervious paver would or anything like that. It's like small pores that allow water to infiltrate. And then it's built on a clear stone, so an open graded stone base that would allow water to infiltrate through.
Cool. And are they street level or are they higher, like it's typical sidewalk level?
It would be right at sidewalk level. Okay. So we think there could be some good spots to do these where the grades work out. And in particular, if there are driveways that are currently just draining out towards the street and into the storm sewer system, we can help try to pick up some of that water as well.
Great, thank you. Anne, am I good for a comment as well?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. So I hear the concerns raised tonight by the folks who chose to speak and the folks who chose to put in public comment. I really want to call out my appreciation to you, Jim, and other folks on engineering team for really trying to figure out a win-win here. I know it's really complex with the cultural, being responsive to the indigenous heritage, the terrain of this area, the water, the accessibility, the street. It's not an easy one. And I have to name out loud the importance of the sidewalks. I heard folks speak tonight that they don't see that there are folks who don't see the need for sidewalks, and even a speaker who spoke about a past resident who used a mobility device who was fine traveling in the street. And those things I will say I find very disturbing from an ableist perspective, and I need to name it. So our sidewalks are a tool of equity, and maybe folks don't see people with disabilities in their neighborhoods right now, but disability is a marginalized group that any one of us can join at any moment. All it takes is an accident or a disease, and everybody will age. Hopefully, we all get to age. So doing a major project that doesn't include accessibility and sidewalks, to me, would just rip my gut. So I know that those are strong words, and I just really want to say that I appreciate the diligence and the difficulty of the situation and engineering's attempt to figure out how do we do the both and in this neighborhood. And it would be a non-starter for me on this project if there weren't sidewalks in it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Denise. Darren, go ahead.
Thank you. I would say, listen to all the comments. The thing that struck me early on after listening to so many announcements to meetings from the UW to the city, there's always the recognition that we're on Ho-Chunk land. I think this is a missed opportunity to work with the Ho-Chunk on this property or on this project and get them to sign off and understand where sensitive areas are. I think that, we don't have to perpetuate. I understand there's houses on there. I understand there's a street on there, but we don't have to keep perpetuating that from past history there. So I think that's a true opportunity there. And just, I would really appreciate understanding more of the environmental impacts of this. I understand they happen at different levels, but I think to come and do road geometry and ignore and pretend like we'll get to the environmental stuff, especially along the lake later on, is a missed opportunity. As someone who's spent time working in Milwaukee along the 30th Street corridor in a bikeway for the last 7 years, and working with the sewer district there on how do we make that happen. I understand it takes a long time, but I think it's better to get it right than to screw it up and create problems later on. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Darren. Bridget?
Yeah, thanks, Anne. I just wanted to comment. I think we all listened really carefully to the comments that were submitted tonight. And it sounds like there's still a lot of time left in the process for there to be, input from residents. But I will say that, a lot of the comments, and I'll just be blunt, a lot of the comments I heard were almost word for word some of the same sorts of comments that we hear in, very conservative parts of the state. Like the northern suburbs of Milwaukee and other places looking at similar projects, that we don't have those kinds of people here. And we don't need those kinds of facilities. I think that it's easy to have that perspective when you're looking, strictly at your neighborhood, but that it's our responsibility on the commission to look comprehensively at public policy and at public works. And I think, the city is working to do that. I think the plans will evolve and change. But, the message that we really heard clearly tonight from a lot of the public comments is that folks want to keep the street right of way sort of to themselves and for their own personal needs and desires. And it's our job to look more comprehensively at what the needs of the city are and the needs of residents and people who visit the city, as well as the specific neighborhood. So, that said, I'm sure it's not a perfect plan so far, but it seems like Jim and other folks in the city have done a good job of working to, get information and get, to the extent that's feasible, the needs of the residents met and balanced with what is good public policy. So I look forward to having this come back. And I do hope that there are some opportunities. Certainly there are opportunities for the residents to reach out and work with the Ho-Chunk as well here on this land and perhaps do a land acknowledgement. That's something that would certainly be within the purview of the residents to look at, whether it's within or outside of the city's right of way.
Thanks, Bridget. Other comments or questions? Harold, go ahead. Were you done, Bridget? Okay, go ahead, Harold.
Yeah, thanks. I think my fellow commissioners have already brought up a good number of really important points. I have a question for city staff. I mean, some of the commenters, either opposing or supporting the project, brought up this idea of the WUNRF, so a street that is built in a way that prioritizes active transportation without having strict separation between uses. Can you say something if like that was considered or if it was considered and you didn't pursue that? Like, yeah, can you maybe say a little bit about that?
Sure, I can talk a little bit about that. It's definitely something that we're taking a look at in our Complete and Green Streets, but this is a street that for many sections has a higher traffic volume. We would perhaps be looking at a denser space. What we don't want to do is build a street that it looks very lovely, but it's really just a parking area. It's not activated. It's not being used in the way that you would traditionally think of a WUNRF. So it's definitely something that's, talked about, something that we'll be talking about here as we work on the Complete and Green Streets, but it's really something that we would be looking at in a really particular area and something that we would want to ensure also has accessibility. That's something that wouldn't go away because we build a WUNRF. That would still be at top of mind.
Thanks. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, other comments or questions? Jim, the environmental, Robbie, go ahead. I'll wait till everybody else is done before I make mine. Go ahead, Robbie.
Thank you. We heard so many comments about water quality and where the water goes and use of salt and, hardscape and, changes to how water is handled and things like that. I am going to assume that city staff has a report on how this would change any kind of stormwater handling or the quality of the water going into the lake, and that was simply not included in our pack. If I am incorrect, perhaps you can correct me, and perhaps that report being available to people in the neighborhood would be helpful to answer some of the concerns that we heard tonight. Thank you.
Jim, you want to field that question?
Sure. For this type of project, the City of Madison is actually not required to do any stormwater treatment of any kind. However, we understand that's important to the neighborhood. So as part of the geometric design, we have identified several opportunities where we can do some things, provided that there is interest from the neighborhood to assist with maintaining. And we also plan to do some gray infrastructure things, catch basins, and some of those things, just because it's good practice. We also, this area is part of a watershed that's about 3.5 square miles. So we have to keep that in mind as we're taking a look at things too, about prioritizing resources and some of those things. So we have taken a look at some distributed green infrastructure just kind of as a citywide thought process and cost effectiveness and some of those things. So I don't think in this particular instance we would provide, a formal like environmental assessment or anything like that. But it's certainly front of mind for us, and we're trying to do what we can within the bounds of the right of way, noting that we're trying to achieve a lot of other goals too.
Robbie, go ahead.
Can I add one other quick thing too? Oh, I'm sorry, Rob. The other thing I wanted to add is, when we're looking at the geometrics and just the right of way, I know a couple of residents noted that there are other public properties and things around the area too that, just because we've laid out a geometric design, that certainly doesn't preclude us from doing something off right of way as well.
My only follow-up, thank you very much for that explanation. I guess my only follow-up would be, since we've heard so many concerns, a couple of sentences saying that things will not become worse because of the project might be helpful and assuage people's concerns. Just something, maybe city engineering who handles stormwater can just put in a few comments. That's all. Thank you.
Alderman Yazzie, go ahead.
Just the same. I mean, Robbie just summed everything up pretty perfectly. But if I could actually say that to host another meeting with engineering and put some of that language, and also to have facilitated with, I don't know how good the city staff is with the Whole Chunk Nation as far as talking with Dan Brown, but actually having him present at that community meeting to let people know that, you guys understand we're compassionate as a city, even though we do have policies, but understanding that their voices are definitely heard. Thanks.
Okay. Is that all you had, Alderman Yazzie?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Other comments? Oh, Bill, go ahead.
Thanks, Ann. I guess a comment back to Jim as far as feedback, I guess. And I guess if looking at sidewalks, if there's sections that you think that one side or the other would be better, that we had just, if we could have just one sidewalk on one side or the other, that instead of both. I know Capitol Avenue on the west of University Avenue has one sidewalk on that stretch, and I guess I'm in favor of the sidewalks, so I don't want to give those up. But I think I agree with Denise that it's very, very important. But is there sections that maybe we can get by with just one, and then we can provide some other, save some other trees or other purposes for that section if we don't need two sidewalks and only have one. Thanks.
Okay, other comments?
Just a quick clarification. We only have sidewalks on both sides between Capitol Avenue and Spring Court as part of this plan. So west of Capitol Avenue, it only has sidewalk on one side, and east of Spring Court only has sidewalk on one side.
Okay, other.
So was that some of the testimony, that comments that were made was not quite,
I think the comment was specific to that area where we are showing sidewalks on both sides.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay, other comments or questions for staff?
Can I ask a quick question?
Who's? This
is Jim Wolf. Sorry.
Go ahead, Jim.
There's Les.
Your hand's not up, so
sorry.
I'm searching the screens for who's talking.
Is there any specific, detailed comments on this preliminary plan from commission members that we could take a look at, adjusting, considering, etc.?
Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, if you could pull up the plan and where the diagonal crossing is. I don't remember what exactly it was. Where the sidewalk switches sides. Yeah. Any reason to have that diagonal? I was wondering, I mean, diagonal crossing always means longer crossing distance. And since you also have the speed humps like relatively nearby, I was wondering if there is maybe the potential to maybe straighten that out and instead make it a raised crossing, which combines, or like some sort of, or maybe do the whole intersection tabletop or something like that, which might combine the function of the speed hump with also making it easier for people to cross on the sidewalk.
Yeah, we could certainly take a look at that. Part of the reason we had the sidewalk end here was really trying to highlight that this is also a walking path. So we're trying to provide access to that, but we could certainly take a look at that. And, one thing as I'm looking at this that we maybe hadn't considered, we're showing the sidewalk on this side, but what are the thoughts about exploring maybe shifting the road to the south and having the sidewalk on this north side, noting that there are a number of large trees that we would have to try to work around. But then we theoretically wouldn't even have this dedicated crossing here.
I mean, I think if we can keep the sidewalk consistently on one side, I mean, that's good in general, because crossings are always problem points. But I guess you'll be the one who is able to answer eventually whether that's feasible with the trees and the grades and all of that. But that seems worth exploring. And then I guess only the other thing, I mean, I think you've done a really good job with reducing the pavement at the crossings at the intersections where there currently is excess pavement, and I guess turning radius is I guess those are as minimal as they are. That might be another way to squeeze out some less pavement out of it, but you probably have already tried to optimize that.
I'll certainly take another look though.
Right, that's what I got.
Okay, thanks, Harold. Denise, go ahead.
Yeah, Jim, that's an interesting idea to move the road to the south and then keep the sidewalk continuous. So if that works, that's a great idea. It avoids having to make that crossing. Then the other thought that I had, this isn't about the geometry, but just an encouragement to look at using that permeable sidewalk, on the higher end as much as possible or as feasible. Just to look at the salt issue and the stormwater runoff issue. So that's it from me.
Sounds good. Just another quick note on that permeable sidewalk. It is roughly 425 times the cost of standard sidewalk. So
that would be an expense for the homeowner then. So I do want to.
We would not assess for that though.
Okay,
we
gotcha.
wouldn't assess anything above standard sidewalk.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Alder Furman, you had your hand up. Did you have some comments? No? Oh.
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. Is that all you had, Denise? Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Thanks. I guess just a small thing. I really like, we heard a lot about the character of the street and trying to preserve that. I like the chicane concepts and some of the bump outs for trees and stuff. So I don't really see any specific opportunities, but I wonder if there are more opportunities to incorporate some of that and maybe break up some parking, maybe save another tree or two. I don't know if there's any opportunities out there, but I think, I think it's worth sort of carrying that throughout the project a little more if it's possible.
Yeah, take another look. We'll see if we got some more possibilities there.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Is that all you had? Okay, Alder Foster, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, and I guess to follow up on Chris's comment there, I think that's a good idea. And if you're able to get sort of kind of narrower sections with enough frequency, it might also open up the chance to put in some share roads, in those places where you don't have the parking. So I understand the issue with putting them in otherwise. but that, maybe you could get to a point where there's enough frequency where that could also just help reinforce that it is sort of a shared space for driving and bikes. So something else to look at if you can get some more of those traffic calming features installed.
Okay, thanks. Other comments or questions? This is our opportunity for feedback at this point. Okay, I am hugely supportive of sidewalks for all of the reasons that everybody has said. I think it's helpful to have some more information with regard to the environmental impacts that we can have along the way. And I think it's great that you've done as much community engagement as you have. We certainly have heard that there's a desire for more, but I realize that you're trying. There have been requests to slow the process down by 8 to 12 weeks is what was specifically requested. So I just want to hear your comments about that, Jim. I mean, you do have some more time here. We're looking out to, you say, the beginning of April. So that's a little bit longer than where you're at. How does that impact your timing in terms of the 2020 construction season?
So I think the full 8 to 12 weeks would probably push us outside of a 2022 construction window. However, right before this meeting, I did nudge some things around. Previously, I think we were looking at introducing and coming back to the commission at your next meeting in March for final geometry. So we have bumped this back a little bit. That April 4th meeting was maybe originally intended to be very specific about detailed design, construction assessments on the 2022 project, but we could maybe postpone geometrics beyond that and use that more as like a general project meeting to kind of discuss some of the things that we've discussed tonight and come back with the final geometry after that and go from there. I think it's definitely a feasible timeline.
Okay. Other comments or questions? We've certainly heard a lot from a lot of people. I worry a little bit that we're not hearing from some of the folks who are maybe as supportive of the project, because you definitely have statistics that show that. And I think we're hearing a lot from the people who are opposed. Alder Harrington McKinney, go ahead. We can't hear you, Alder. Oh, now you're muted. Yeah, Joe, can you help out here?
Looks like she's on the phone. *6. Says you're unmuted, Alder.
Can you do *6?
Well, the phone is unmuted, was unmuted as well.
Oh, okay.
No, it's not.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Alder. Okay. Sorry, we can't hear you, ma'am. Other comments or questions? Okay, Jim, we really appreciate, and Renee and everybody, we really appreciate Tom Yang, everybody who's been working on this. We appreciate everything, and I do believe that you are listening to people and trying as best you can to balance what we have indicated are safety concerns and what we think is important in this reconstruction with what you're hearing from the neighbors. So we certainly thank you for that. This is last opportunity for the commission for comments till we hear from you again next time. Okay, great. Thanks so much, everybody. I'm saving all my notes. Okay, so we are at number 7, Tokay Boulevard.
You'll get to hear from me again.
Okay, do we have any, let me just ask up front, do we have anybody registered to speak on this one?
Person registered in support, but they're not speaking.
Okay. Okay, just wanted to know what to be watching for. Thanks. Go ahead.
All right, I'm going to share a quick plan here. I think Jeremy Nash is also on with us, kind of talk about some of the proposed pavement marking changes. All right, so we have a proposed resurfacing project on Tokay Boulevard. This is Whitney Way on the west end and Seago Road on the east. So we'll be replacing some utilities out here, but it's primarily a resurfacing job. However, the majority of the curb around these medians is in poor condition, is overlaid. So we are proposing with this project to make some slight modifications in the roadway geometry here. So part of the project would be we could narrow the typical width of the street from it's about 21 and a half feet on either side of the median to be about 20 feet face to face. Right now, I think it's just a single travel lane with parking allowed on the street. And what we would propose to do within the limits here would be install a buffered bike lane with a single travel lane in either direction in that narrowed street width. The parking in this area is primarily just used by some of the commercial properties here that have surface parking lots as well. So we think this is a reasonable design to better accommodate and improve safety for bicycling on Tokay Boulevard. Jeremy, do you have anything to add?
Oh yeah, I'll just include one other thing. We're looking at adding in a mid-block crossing as well. There are 2 mid-block bus stops that people would have to walk to either into the block to then cross the street. So we're looking at adding in a mid-block crossing a little bit to the left of where Jim's hand is, kind of in that area right there, to kind of line up for those bus stops.
Okay, comments or questions? Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Can you say a little bit about, Tokay Boulevard continues, and I think it is a fairly important connection for people biking because I guess it goes at an angle and goes across. So is there any thought that this would be continued at some point on additional stretches of Tokay?
I can maybe jump in on that one, James. So it's definitely on our radar. So this is kind of the first opportunity with this resurfacing. But it's likely to end up being one of our priority bike network. So definitely it's something that we would want to take a look at and see how we can continue having a facility, because we know right now it is used by people cycling, and with the parking and the way the islands are, it's not comfortable when you're past if there's cars parked. So definitely something that we would want to take a look at as a future project.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Sorry.
Oh, just a little bit more context. Like as we go east of here, it does become more residential too. So there's a little bit of a different context than once you get east of Seago too.
And question about the slip lane when you get to Seago. I guess you need that because of the angle. But in general, like avoiding slip lanes whenever we can in an urban context.
Yep, we can take a look at that, but I think you're probably right about the angle here. But we can maybe try to narrow this down or something like that to really reduce that.
Yeah, I think we can look at that. We were talking about that a little bit internally, and obviously this is still a bus route, and if we take away the slip lane, we want to make sure it doesn't make that intersection worse because of the angle. So, but we could definitely continue to kind of look at how we can refine that.
Yeah, this might be one of the few cases where slip lane might be unavoidable, but maybe you can have the crossing at grade and cars or buses have to go over or something like that. So yeah, take another look at that. I think that's all I have. I think buffered bike lane makes a lot of sense here. 20 feet gives you plenty of space to work with, and if you have to touch the curbs anyway.
Thanks, Harold. Denise, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. So at the mid-block crossings, what kind of pavement markings are you thinking about for those?
I was thinking about a continental crosswalk for that mid-block crossing.
Awesome, thank you. That's what I was hoping to hear.
Is that all you had, Denise? Okay, Bill, go ahead.
Thanks, Ann. I think the buffered bike lanes make perfect sense on this street. There's no reason not to, I think. I have a question about Jim or Jeremy. Where would that mid-block crossing be? You put your pointer at the turn lane, and that was not what I was expecting.
It'd be just to the left of that median. So just between those two, yes, so right there. So be going across in that area. The bus stops are a few feet to the east of there, I believe.
But do the bus stops have to be there?
Oh, that's a good question. We could talk to Metro about possibly moving those.
I mean, I guess having the pedestrian cross right in a left turn bay, I guess that just doesn't, I don't quite understand that. That makes the crossing longer.
Justin, are you on?
I don't know if he is back. I mean, we can definitely talk to Metro. We've been talking to them about this because this project has been on their list for a while because it's currently, it isn't accessible. You have to go all the way.
Yeah. No, I understand that, and I think it's a good idea to have a mid-block there, but I guess, having it right at the left turn bay to lengthen that crossing through traffic, not to take advantage of the median, I guess. The other, I assume that you've had where the driveways, or are there going to be driveways from Tokay into the Westgate development? And that's what that left turn bay is, I assume, right?
I actually think the left turn bay.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that for the new?
There's like an Epic.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah.
That serves.
So will there be no left turn then for the new Westgate? It'll be just right in somewhere.
We will. I actually think there might be a left out, but not a left in. We'll have to take a look at that. But
yeah, I think
Chris has some more information on that.
There is a median cut that's planned with that developer agreement to go into Westgate there. It's kind of by that cluster of trees.
Right there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because that's going to be quite a big, substantial traffic generator, I suspect.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, following up on the pedestrian mid-block crossing, I just looking at the map, there's that pedestrian path that connects over to Science Drive. That might be another natural point to create a mid-block crossing, I guess, and I'm not sure where in the map that is here. I think it might be farther to the east. Is that maybe it? So yeah, I think thinking about aligning that, I mean, I don't think it's a big deal, but if you have that connection anyway, then maybe putting the crossing there works. That makes sense.
Okay. Other comments or questions? Jim, Jeremy, did you have other questions that you wanted answered or other feedback you were looking for?
Nothing for me.
Nope, nothing else here either. So thank you.
Yep. Renee, how about you?
Nope, that's perfect.
Okay. All right, great. And we're not looking for any approvals on this one. It's just review and feedback, right?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, next we have item 8. I think this is Jerry. We're looking at Henry Street and West Washington Avenue. Do we have anybody registered to speak on this one, Aiden?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Hi,
Are you there?
everyone.
Oh, there you are, Jerry. Okay, go ahead.
My name is Jerry Shippa with City Madison Traffic Engineering Department. Go ahead and share my screen. And so you talked about the Henry and West Washington Avenue traffic signal installation that was approved by this body about a year ago in February of 2021. We are proposing some geometric changes at this intersection to help facilitate traffic signal. So I'll kind of walk through a couple key items. The first would be this first page showing some pavement marking removal. And really the key thing I want to show here is the green thermoplastic lines, skip lines are going to remain. On the east side, we'll be updating that upgrading that crosswalk to a continental crosswalk. But the big meat of the change in this intersection is going to be the median work. So on the west median, we have a 5-foot, it's just kind of a concrete slab. It doesn't have a gutter, so it's just kind of think of a curb face. That isn't going to be changing too much. We don't have a lot of room to widen that. However, on the east side, we are widening that. Again, it's currently a 5-foot wide median. We're proposing to widen that to 10 feet at the pedestrian crossing and 14 feet a little bit east of there. And we're able to do that by, going down to the next page, by taking the left eastbound lane and making it a left turn only lane. So on the approach as you're heading east, the left lane will turn left, the right lane will be a right and through. So then on the east side of the intersection, there's only one vehicle receiving lane. That way drivers don't kind of get up to this intersection and spread out and, you have 2 through lanes going through the intersection. It kind of keeps everyone a little bit more organized through the intersection and until they exit. Just a couple other things while we're on this page. As you can see, we're keeping the continental crosswalks on the west side, adding continental crosswalks to the east side, extending, not only widening the east median, but extending that nose through the crosswalk. So there'll be a 10-foot refuge island with the detectable warning fields, and it'll have a little bit of a rise on the traffic side. I think that's about it. The westbound lane currently is a bike lane. We've talked to Metro, and we're going to propose that to be a bus bike right turn lane to line up with the bus bike lane on the receiving end. So that would go back about 60 or 70 feet, kind of back to where the parking starts. Would not remove parking, but we're just going to go back to that spot. But the big changes here that we wanted to highlight were the widening the median on the east side and improving the crossing on that side. So we're here for information and feedback. So that was all I had. I'm here to answer any questions.
Alder Foster, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Jerry. For the eastbound left turning movement, do you have any numbers for the volume? So eastbound West Washington to left turn onto Henry Street?
I unfortunately don't have volumes right now. We can get those. They were, if my memory serves me correct, we do have volumes. I just don't have them readily available. Mm-hmm. They were heavier in the morning than the afternoon. but not enough that we felt we needed to signalize that left turn. But we can follow up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just take another look at it. I mean, I think I'm supportive of what you're showing here, but if it were possible to not even have that, I mean, you could then get a bigger median on that west side as well. Have the one through lane, and I mean, you'd still have plenty of space in the intersection for a left turning vehicle to be queued up and waiting. But you take a look at the overall traffic flows. But I mean, if it's not needed, it looks like it could be an opportunity to really improve the ped crossing on the west side of the intersection as well.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, thanks. Bridget, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to say I definitely appreciate keeping the crosswalks on both corners here. And I think that'll be great. Can you tell me a little bit about the median itself there? What would that material be in there? Would it just be like some sort of a pavement, or what would the treatment be for the interior of the median?
You're talking about the larger median?
Yeah.
Yeah. We spoke with engineering, and they are recommending going with the same material that was used on the other section of West Washington. I don't have the exact color name, but it's a colored, stamped, textured concrete.
Okay, great.
And yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Otherwise, yeah, this, from what I can tell, this looks great.
Okay, thanks, Bridget. Darren, go ahead.
Just say, as someone whose introduction to Madison was playing chicken on this exact crossing, so much so that I took a job so I didn't have to cross the street. This is a much improved thing, and I think it'll be really liked by all the people who use it.
Thanks, Darren. Harald, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I'm having a little bit of hard time imagining. So if we continue on West Washington toward the Capitol, like basically, what happens right outside of the drawing. So we go into the intersection, like you come out of the intersection with a single lane, and there's the bike lane on the right? That's where we have the 12+6 next to the island there. Okay,
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. And then once you continue, the road widens and you have 2 lanes, because you have to write 2 right turning lanes still leading to the next intersection. I guess let me maybe reframe this. Why I'm asking is that transition zone where the people who are in the bike lane on the curb side and who want to continue straight toward the Capitol have to make this awkward crossing of the 2 right turning lanes for the people who turn onto Fairchild. And so I'm wondering if there's any impact on this change, or if maybe there could be positive impact from this change that you're proposing to somehow fix that issue. Did that make any sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That was one thing we kind of looked at early on was, is there any way to improve kind of that double crossover, what you just described there, without really redoing the signal at Fairchild and adding a bike signal, and keeping that bike lane closer to the curb and then having it cross the dual right lanes, which took a little bit more work than this project's adding a signal at this intersection. That was quite a bit more work to add to this. Without doing that, this geometry, the geometry alone basically keeps all those interactions the same. It just removes that through lane. But I will say one thing that's not on here that this is a great transition to this, would be we're adding near and far bike detection going up the hill. And if you are, the way we're planning on operating this is if you are over that detector, maybe while the side street is timing, instead of cars getting a green, then, you know, you as a bicyclist in a car, driver, you know, take off from the green, and then you kind of get into that conflict zone, you know, maybe with that second or third driver. That it would call a special phase. It's basically a leading ped interval. And then it would be signed that bikes can use the walk signal, and it would be long enough to get somebody into that conflict zone before the drivers get a green. So we're hoping that we can use signal timing to kind of separate those two movements with that specific conflict point in mind.
That's amazing. I hope we can make that work. So yeah, no concerns then for me. That all sounds great. And yeah, I get the point that the other intersection is a whole different issue that eventually we're going to solve, hopefully. Thanks.
Thanks, Harold. Bridget, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I'm. This is an area where I frequently have difficulty crossing, so I'm just a little more curious about what you're talking about, Jerry. So even with cars being able to go right on red, something you guys would be able to do something with the crossing timing to give bikes and peds a lead out?
So the current plans would be to install no turn on red.
Okay.
For the side street inbound West Washington. And just for a few different reasons, it's a safety improvement between right turning drivers and pedestrians crossing, kind of improves a leading pedestrian interval. But also, if we have these left turn bike boxes with detection, then anytime someone drives, you know, makes a right on red that they're likely to trigger it, then you might get a side street call when there's no longer traffic there.
Okay, thanks, Bridget. Alder Foster, go ahead.
Thanks. One other thought, particularly if you are going to be able to do something kind of bike focused with the signal, could maybe consider a bike box at that eastbound at Henry as well. So that way, if you are in a situation where there's a red light, then you could also, that would also give bikes the opportunity to get over to that, into that travel, to the left side, basically. And then that combined with the leading interval, I mean, I don't know if it's a huge thing, but it could help preempt some of the conflict that would happen later on. So something to consider.
What direction was that again?
So the eastbound on West Wash, where you're basically for through bike traffic, where you're going to want to cross over left or have cars cross over you to the right. But if you had a bike box on the near side of that intersection, then bikes could get into basically in front of that travel lane at the red light. And then with the leading interval, they're already basically in the travel lane rather than keeping them in a bike lane on the curb across the intersection and having them cross over.
Okay. Yep. Take a look at that.
Okay. Okay, a lot of great feedback. Any other comments? Okay, did you get everything you needed, Jerry?
Yeah, I think we're good. Thank you.
All right, great, thanks. Next, Chris, do you have any, I don't think we have Alder Harrington McKinney here still. Do you have anything from the Transportation Policy and Planning Board?
Sure. I think the main thing folks might be interested in is WSDOT is seeking input on the Beltline, including the main thing being where there could be additional crossings
both streets and bike and pedestrian stuff. So the city's providing some feedback. So the policy board weighed in on where the priorities might be on that. The only other thing on the agenda was some changes to the name and mission of the parking division, which is actually currently the parking utility. So it would probably become the parking division and have some other mission changes. They're seeking a new someone to replace Sabrina.
Okay, great, thanks. And Bill and Robbie, you're both involved in the Beltline project as well, are you not? Yeah. So just let us know when we distributed that memo, Chris, that Tom Lynch wrote. So everybody on the Transportation Commission should have seen that. But Robbie and Bill and Chris, let us know, if and when it's appropriate to have it on the TC agenda, so you guys can provide an additional update as well.
Yeah. Since TPPB already got a briefing, do we want to have a briefing here as well, or is that too much? Is that overload?
Well, what we would typically do, Robbie, if it's the same briefing, is I think Aiden, didn't we distribute the memo that Tom wrote, and then a link to the meeting, so you can actually go watch the. If you didn't attend the meeting, you can watch the video of the meeting, so you can hear what Tom Lynch had to say. And we're trying not to duplicate, but at the same point, that means you don't get to participate and ask questions. So, if it's appropriate to have Tom come back, it's a very important part of our roadways, obviously, and interacts with, many places where we may have, thoughts as well. So if you're interested in having Tom come back and talk about it, the feedback's already gone to WSDOT already, but we certainly can schedule that. We have it on our future agenda topics at some point. So I'll just make sure that, I guess you just need to tell me when that would be appropriate. Harold or Robbie, do you have any thoughts about when that would be appropriate?
No, there's some public meetings coming up. So I'll just let the commission know when those public meetings are coming up. And, maybe people can tune in to those, shall we say.
Yes, that would be great. That would be awesome. And again, let us know when it should come up as a topic here. Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to emphasize, as somebody who did watch the discussion at TPPB, the recording, I think it was really good to understand where we started at and what the city's position is, to provide a little bit more context about the memo that we have seen. So I would encourage other commissioners to watch that if you haven't done so already. But I don't think we don't want duplication of the same discussion at this point, and maybe be strategic about when it makes more sense, when there's new developments or new public input, to have that here.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Chris. In terms of general announcements, I think you all noticed that Chris made a suggestion that in terms of how we organize the documents in Legistar, showing what's staff and what's from the public. And I think that's been real helpful feedback from folks as they've been helping. Yeah, great suggestion, Chris. And thanks to Aiden for implementing the suggestions and some ideas about how to make those improvements that Chris suggested. So again, any opportunity to help. I mean, when we see things like Lake Mendota Drive and Hammersley, where we get so many messages from people and from the public, it's great to have them organized like that. So thanks much for that. And just a brief update on the transformative leadership education training. We've had a lot of participants from PC members, a lot of participation, and again, that's been a very rewarding experience for me. So that's all I had in terms of announcements. In terms of future agenda topics, they're posted in Legistar. If you have anything that you don't see on there, and I just have to double check and make sure that the Beltline is included. We we certainly want to have that at some point. We just need to know when that best point would be. If there's any other topics, let me know now, or shoot Aiden an email, and we'll add it to the list for future meetings. Okay, we need a motion to adjourn. Okay, we're under 4 hours. Bill, that's a motion to adjourn. Robbie, is that a second? All right. I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote to adjourn. Thanks, everybody. Lots of great discussion and engagement today. Thanks so much.